That's right. Welcome in to the IdahoSports.com 2024 Girls State Basketball Tournament Preview Special. Over the next 90 minutes tonight on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, Twitter account, Instagram account, also on our website at IdahoSports.com under the Game Streams tab. Over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be breaking down every state basketball tournament, complete with brackets and matchups and breakdowns and players to watch and all of that good, exciting stuff. Let's start with the biggest schools there are, the Class 5A Girls Basketball State Tournament. I'm Brandon Bainey along with Sean Kane. Sean, you and I are going to be at the Girls 5A State Basketball Tournament. And boy, we've got a lot of data to work off of this year. We've had Lake City beat Boise, and Boise beat Rocky Mountain, and Rocky Mountain beat Lake City, and Coeur d'Alene beat Rocky Mountain, and Coeur d'Alene beat Lake City, and Rigby beat Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene, yeah. I mean, they've all kind of played. You've kind of got a bracket where you can look at it and go, I don't know who's going to win.
It is
normally you've got like this team in the finals for sure. This year, I mean, who knows what could happen? There's just a lot of interesting matchups.
Yeah, that is the theme of the tournament. All of my 5A girls basketball fans, if you're in the chat tonight, I want to hear you shout out your favorite team, your favorite player, your favorite coach. If you've got a question about the 5A bracket specifically for Sean or I, you can go ahead and throw that in the chat, and we will throw it up on the screen as well. So, Sean, let me see here. Let me see if I've got the 5A bracket loaded up here. I'm not seeing it. So, you mentioned the familiarity amongst all of these teams. It really does, and it's not even familiarity just this season, but right away, right off the bat, we have a couple of rematches from state tournament games last year, Sean. I mean, right away at the top of the bracket, Coeur d'Alene, the 4 seed, Rocky Mountain, the 5. That was last year's championship game.
Yeah, you have Rocky Mountain, who, you could say had some upsets last year, makes it to the final against Coeur d'Alene. And then you've got Coeur d'Alene finally now at a full strength with Colvin, and they're kind of rolling right now as they did in the district tournament over Lake City. So you've got a rematch of the final in the first round. So Rocky Mountain's been dangerous all year. That SIC, sometimes you could flip a coin in any given night to see what's going to happen. And that's a really good matchup. Both teams, I'm sure Rocky Mountain would love to have that matchup, and they got it.
Yeah, and they also got it in the regular season as well. So, Sean, here's the matchup. Here's the bracket. And all of these games will take place at the Ford Idaho Center. A couple of consolation games at Timberline High School as well. Okay, so you've got Coeur d'Alene and Rocky Mountain right away at noon on Thursday, 4 versus 5. Then it's the top dogs from Boise taking on Madison, the 8 seed. They won the play-in game Saturday over Eagle. That'll be at 2 o'clock. Number 2, Lake City against number 7, Middleton in the third game Thursday evening at 5 o'clock. And then the 3 and the 6, that's a rematch from last year's consolation final between Rigby and Owyhee. That'll be at 7 o'clock on Thursday night. What is the number one thing that jumps out to you when you look at that bracket?
Well, I think we kind of hit it. Is the Coeur d'Alene Rocky Mountain matchup's pretty big. I also think that Lake City Middleton game is pretty big. You had Middleton was the 2 seed in their district. They didn't make it to the final, but they made it to state. You have Lake City, who was kind of the top dog in the north. Avery Waddington, the Montana signee, as a dominant kind of player. I've heard a lot about her recently, which she's kind of under the radar for someone who's going to Montana, I believe. And I think that's a great matchup. I think you got 2 teams there that, they could possibly both make it to the final right off the back.
And the bottom line is almost all of these teams that are here at state have a 6 foot or taller player that can play inside, can also handle the ball, and essentially play every position on the floor, 1 through 5. And they're big time college basketball recruits too. I mean, you talked about Avery Waddington from Lake City, right? She's signed with the University of Montana. Probably the biggest in terms of star power, Avery Howell from Boise High. She's committed to USC down there in Los Angeles. But then, you look at Rigby, and they've got Cambry Barber, who's committed to BYU, and she is a 6'1". almost like a point forward. And then with Coeur d'Alene, you've got the Colvin sisters, Tegan Colvin, not quite as tall as all of these other players we've mentioned, but she's still a Division I athlete. She's going to play at UNLV next year. Her younger sister, Brooksley Colvin, is a freshman. I went by Coeur d'Alene High School the other night, Sean, to have them fill out a couple of things for state basketball. And Brooksley as a freshman, Brooksley Colvin, she's already gotten so many commitments. She had trouble remembering all of the schools.
What a problem. And then also Maddie Mitchell from Coeur d'Alene is kind of a point guard. She might be one of the best point guards in the state that you kind of might not even have heard of. She's really good as well.
Yeah, and that's really what has allowed Coeur d'Alene to unlock all of the success that they've had. When Tegan Colvin transferred in last year from Washington, she became that primary ball handler. And then all of a sudden, you have Maddie Mitchell in the backcourt who can also handle the ball, but it's also allowed Maddie Mitchell to become more of a spot-up shooter, and she is an excellent three-point shooter as well. Here's Easton in the chat. He says, I'm taking Rigby all the way. And Sean, if we look at that bracket, it's going to be a gauntlet up top, right? With Boise and Coeur d'Alene and Rocky. Whoever wins that Coeur d'Alene Rocky matchup, we think will probably play Boise in the semis. And then at the bottom of the bracket, to me, it's kind of wide open. And I actually kind of like Rigby down at the bottom as the 3 seed.
Yeah, we got to see Rigby last year, and they were a little younger, I think, and now you've got pretty much everyone coming back. And Cambry Barbary was one of the best players, I think, overall in 5A last year. Like we talk about some of those other players, but she kind of does it all, from bringing the ball up from the post, and she can light it up from the 3-point line as well.
Yeah, she's 6'1", and then Miley Graham is 6 foot, and they both are tremendous rebounders. They're both tremendous defenders. I was watching some film on Rigby today, Sean, from their district championship win over Madison, and Rigby just makes everything difficult. Like just completing a simple chest pass from me to you is tough against this Rigby defense. Very active hands. They've got, 6 or 7 players that average between 1 or 2 steals per game, and some are, closer to 3 or 4. It is a very active defense for Rigby, and it really keys a lot of their success. Okay, so we've talked about Coeur d'Alene and Rocky Mountain at the top half of that bracket. Let's talk about Boise. I think if you took a poll of all the 5A basketball fans, I think they'd probably tell you the Brave are the favorite coming in. They are the number 1 seed. They've only lost once this year. It was to Lake City, like second game of the year in November, and they've been pushed in spurts by the teams they've played since then, Coeur d'Alene and Rocky and Middleton, but they always seem to find ways to extend the lead down the stretch. They're a very strong finishing team, a very good fourth quarter team. We mentioned Avery Howell. Patrico is a great point guard. They have been so good over these last 6-7 years. Is this finally the year Boise High breaks through and brings home the first place trophy?
And when I look at it right now as a team, they're shooting 37% from the 3-point line. And when you're almost at that 40% line from 3-point, if you can keep that rolling in, I think, man, they have the speed and the depth, that's kind of built for a 3-day tournament. They talk about their depth, and they have good bench, and that's what can make it a difference when you're playing 3 days, right? You got to win 3 days to go there, and it might be Boise's year. But I like that 3-point shooting they've got from like really all their players. 37% as a team is phenomenal.
Yeah, Clark and Howell we mentioned, and Patrico, and then they bring in Katie Hahn, who's 6 feet and can play down low. They are a very talented team, and then their 6th man, basically, Sean, is Presley Binder. She was a starter last year at Mountain View. She'd probably start for just about every other team in the SIC. She's the 6th man for Boise. Tells you kind of how good this unit is. So
yeah, when you have someone who can come off the bench and just kind of get that fire started, that's something. It's invaluable, and that's what they have with Binder. And one thing also, in kind of looking over some stats, is Boise's really good at rebounding. They get a ton of offensive rebounds, which we all know that leads to second chance points. And that's just so valuable at state. You're at the Idaho Center. It's a different arena. the shots might not fall until you get adjusted. So offensive rebounding is huge.
Yep. And again, Boise and Coeur d'Alene played in the semifinals last year at the 5A state tournament, went to overtime. Coeur d'Alene pulled it out of the fire. We could be headed toward a similar showdown. I mean, either way, you're looking at a rematch, either Boise Coeur d'Alene from last year or Boise Rocky Mountain from the SIC championship game, which was just last Friday night at the ICCU Arena. Let's talk about Madison real quick. They're the team that kind of gets lost in the shuffle here. They're the number 8 seed on that top half of the bracket. Young coach in Luke Sutton, who has taken Madison back to state for the first time in a couple of years, Sean. And I'll admit, me personally, and I think a lot of people didn't see Madison advancing past Eagle in that play-in game on Saturday, but they got the job done. And they've got, Mia Walsh, who's 6 feet tall, and she can handle the ball and go inside and rebound. And then Nora Waddups underneath is a great post player too. And this is a young Madison team also.
Yeah, they're young. They've just kind of gotten the job done. And we talked about this a little bit on the East Idaho Prepcast. Is they played a very strong 4A schedule, like a lot of tough teams. And if you go in and look, they actually have a pretty hard strength of schedule. Just unfortunately Rigby, who's another great team who's at state, is in their division. But I kind of thought Madison could come out of that Eagle game. We talked about it a little bit, and they did just that. And I think, you're young and you can go and you can make things happen. They just have 2 seniors on the roster and 2 sophomores and 2 juniors start. So, I mean, that team is super young. So if anything, what an experience for these young players to look for, kind of bridge some gaps.
Yeah, really exciting time for the Madison Bobcats. And then on that bottom half of the bracket, we talked about Rigby. We talked about Lake City, the number 2 seed. They've only lost twice all year, Sean, to Rocky Mountain by a point, and then to Coeur d'Alene in the District 1-2 championship. And that was kind of an eye-opener. They dropped that game by double digits, and they got knocked around in a way we haven't really seen this year. The game plan for Coeur d'Alene coming in was, we're going to make life uncomfortable for Avery Waddington. We're going to make sure she doesn't even get to the spots that she likes to operate, and we're going to make their other shooters beat us. Well, Lake City had a cold shooting night, and that's why they fell. Now, they were on a mission. I mean, they took it to Timberline in that state play-in game and looked very talented in doing so. And so I'm wondering how many coaches will try to mimic what Coeur d'Alene did to Lake City to try and knock the T-Wolves out.
Yeah, and you've got a Lake City team that, they didn't even qualify for state, and they were one of the top teams last year. You got a lot of these players back, and I mean, they're legit kind of a title contender. They're hungry. Their experience, I think they have good depth. I think Lake City is super strong, and you kind of a little off the radar of what have just transpired. But if you sleep on them, you're going to be sleeping a long time.
And Lake City plays Middleton, the number 7 seed. Middleton took second in the regular season in District 3, fell to Rocky Mountain by 5 in the district tournament semifinals. Got their way to state, though, and this is a young team, too. They're led by a really strong group of sophomores and juniors. In fact, it's all sophomores and juniors in the starting lineup for Middleton. Marianne Blackwell is in her first season as the head coach. She has really injected some life into this program. Her daughter, Zoe Blackwell, is kind of the key piston in the engine for Middleton. Great sophomore guard. Middleton, I kind of lump with Madison, where they're, maybe a year away from, competing with like a Boise or a Coeur d'Alene. But I think for Middleton, they've got a good chance here of opening some eyes. But at the same time, this is going to be great experience for all of these underclassmen that come back next year too. Yeah,
and you've got to look at it. It's the first time Middleton's made it as a 5A team too. So, what an accomplishment there. And I'm sure they're going to be willing to take care of business regardless. But definitely a strong team, and they're a pretty fast team. And you could see some contrast of styles in that game.
Yep. Middleton last got to state in 2022, 2 years ago, but it was the 4A state tournament. They had to play Bishop Kelly in the consolation final, and they won that matchup. But Coach Blackwell is the 3rd coach in 3 years at Middleton High School as well. And then we have Owyhee, right? Owyhee, the 6th seed. They're going to play Rigby in the opening round. And this is an Owyhee team that's also young. They've got one senior leader in Sid Rodriguez. She started her career at Bora, transferred to Owyhee, was ruled ineligible for the postseason a year ago, Sean. So she couldn't compete when Owyhee got to state. Now she's back and motivated and ready to go. They almost lost to Timberline in a basically a consolation game at districts, where then Hawaii would have had to have turned around to play Lake City in a state play-in game, if you could imagine that. But after Timberline scored with 10 seconds to go to take a 2-point lead, Mikhail Roy hits a 3 from the corner to win it for Hawaii by a single point to clinch that bid at state for the Storm. And so, Josie Davis is a great athlete. Mikhail Roy, we just talked about. This is an Hawaii team that I think, as much as I like Rigby, if there's going to be a first-round upset, Sean, this is the one I'm calling right here, 6/3.
Yeah, and Hawaii starts 4 players that are 5'10" or over, so they're one of the taller teams, I think, overall, that at least as starters go. And Hawaii, you look at all the teams have great records. I mean, the Storm still, 16-8 isn't a slouch, and they're definitely a good team, and they could come away with an upset. They found a way to kind of scratch their way through, and when you do that, you're riding that momentum into the next game.
Now, Rigby did beat Hawaii back in December, 65-38, but Hawaii has improved a lot, as has Rigby. But that's the thing. We've got a lot of good data points on, but it makes it hard to forecast too, because everybody's kind of beating each other. So
yeah, everyone's beating each other. There's not one strong a pointing arrow anywhere. If you had a compass, the magnetic pole might not be working very well when you look at all these teams.
Yep. All right. Well, let's take a look at our 5A players to watch here. We picked one from each school, just kind of a starting point for the conversation. It's not an exclusive list by any means. We picked one from each school. And so here's what we've got for our 5A players to watch. Avery Howell from Boise, Tegan Colvin from Coeur d'Alene, Avery Waddington from Lake City. Those first 3 players, all Division I basketball players. Nora Waddups from Madison. We talked about the Great Post. Zoe Blackwell from Middleton. Sid Rodriguez from Hawaii. She's a D1 commit. Seattle U, the Redhawks. Cambry Barber from Rigby, and CC Legaspi from Rocky Mountain. Sean, which player are you most excited to see?
Right now, I'm pretty excited to see Avery Waddington, because I haven't been able to see her live. I think that'll be really great experience. So I'm pretty excited to see her. And then also, I really enjoy watching Cambry Barber live. She's a phenomenal player to watch.
Yeah, as a University of Montana alum, AKA I went there for a year, I'm super excited that Avery Waddington chose the Lady Grizz to continue her career. I'm most excited, Sean, to see Zoe Blackwell from Middleton. She's a sophomore, but she doesn't play like a sophomore, and how she adjusts to the bright lights of state, I think is going to be really interesting. So Zoe Blackwell from Middleton is my player to keep an eye on there. All right, Sean, let's get official championship prediction from you. Let's throw that bracket up on the screen one more time here, and we'll put down your official prediction for the record book here.
I'll take Boise.
Who do you have Boise against?
I'm going to go Boise versus Rigby.
Okay, I like it. I'm going to go with Coeur d'Alene and Rigby in the championship. I'm going a rematch from the Tarkanian Classic. These two played in Las Vegas earlier this year. Coeur d'Alene is a team on a mission. They have been injured all season long, Sean. They finally have everybody back. They're motivated. Coach Simmons up there at Coeur d'Alene High, Nicole Simmons, she said, hey, everybody in the media and on social media wrote us off. We got the chip on our shoulder. We're ready to defend our title. They've made me a believer. I'm going to go Coeur d'Alene against Rigby in the championship, and I'll go Rigby to win it all. How about that?
Wow. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I'll pick Boise and Rigby to make it there, and I'm going to pick Boise right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's none of the teams we just talked about either.
Honestly, it could
and
be.
I'm serious.
Yes, it could be any matchup. All these teams are so evenly matched. It's going to be a really fun tournament. So the 5A state tournament, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at the Idaho Center, and also Timberline High School. Sean, thanks for hopping on. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll take a break, and we'll come back with our 4A state tournament preview right after this. You're watching the 2024 Idaho High School Girls Basketball State Tournament Preview Special on IdahoSports.com.
But it's just water vapor, right?
Vapes don't make vapor, they produce an aerosol. These particles include toxins and chemicals that can cause lung disease and cancer. Be smart, don't start.
Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com state tournament preview special presented by No Vape Idaho. Be smart, don't start. Brandon Baney joined by Lucas Gebhardt and Ryan Luke. Gentlemen, the 4A girls basketball state tournament is what we're here to talk about. Thanks for hopping on, Lucas. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Happy to be here.
Ryan, you look very professional with the headset on. It looks
Yeah,
good.
I'm full-blown gamer mode right now.
He probably sounds a little better than I do. I'm just, freelancing it here with no headset or anything. So
Yeah, and your internet's touch and go too. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go. Here's the 4A bracket, gentlemen. At the top, 4 versus 5, Lakeland and Bishop Kelly. Then it's the number 1 seed Shelley against number 8 Columbia, number 2 Pocatello against number 7 Jerome, and then it's number 3 Skyline against number 6 Minico. You'll notice Sandpoint, the defending champions, not here. They lost 2 of 3 to Lakeland in the best of 3 championship series up north. Lucas, I'll start with you. When you look at this bracket, what is the first thing that jumps out to you?
To me, it's Shelley versus the field, really. I mean, Shelley is kind of the clear-cut number 1 team in this bracket. Obviously the record kind of speaks for itself and what they've been able to do this year. But outside of that, it's in the field. There's several teams that I think could not only get to the state championship, but if Shelley somehow gets knocked off in the semis or the quarters, I think this thing is just wide open outside of Shelley. So really, the thing that stands out is Shelley, clear-cut favorite. But, if they somehow get knocked out, I think there's 5 or 6 teams that can win this thing.
Shelley is the only team left in Idaho girls basketball, I believe, that is still undefeated on the season. I didn't double check that statistic, but I feel pretty confident about that. That was the storyline coming into state last year. Shelley's the overwhelming favorite. All of a sudden, Sandpoint comes out of nowhere, beats them in the championship game. Ryan, when you look at this bracket, what is the first thing that jumps out to you?
All right, so first of all, preface this with I am from Shelley, so go Rustus. Now, I didn't go to Shelley High though, so that's the caveat. But my mom was Miss Shelley, the Miss Russ at like 1970 something. So that's how we roll. Okay, so in talking about the bracket, here's the thing. I actually think Shelley got the tougher draw, and here's why. Because you have Bishop Kelly on that top end. Bishop Kelly, their losses this year went against Boise, Eagle, Owyhee, and Ridgeview. Ridgeview being the only 4A loss in all of that. And I'm not downplaying Lakeland. I think Lakeland's a phenomenal team, but I think Shelley comes up against a Bishop Kelly team. So their path to the championship game is actually tougher than Skyline. Now, Skyline being their quote unquote nemesis, Skyline played up to within 2 points, and Blackfoot was the other one that played Shelley within 1 point. I actually think they're the tougher of the 2 teams on the bottom half of that bracket, and they have a clearer path. Pocatello, great team, don't get me wrong. But I think at the end of the day, you're looking at, okay, you get past one team that was the champion that got knocked off pretty handily by Shelley. It could be a rematch of Skyline Shelley in the state championship, but I think that Shelley has to do more work to get there.
Yeah, and I think even right away with Columbia, that's not an easy out either. I saw last year at state, Columbia was the 7 seed, Blackfoot was the 2 seed. Blackfoot was like a heavy title favorite, and Columbia knocked them out in that first round, and they were done. So even Columbia on the 8 seed line there is pretty interesting. Any 4A hoop fans out there that want to join in the conversation, give your favorite team, your favorite player a shout out. You want to ask us a question or drop a prediction, throw it in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen. So, Lucas, let's go back to that top half of the bracket that we talked about here. Shelley and Columbia matchup. Ellie Robertson, she leads Columbia, Lucas, in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and I'm pretty sure blocks per game. Like every statistical category, it's Ellie Robertson.
Yeah, I mean, pick your category. She's your team leader, but you know what that tells you from Shelley's perspective is you take her out of the game and, your chances of, significantly increased of winning that game. But from Columbia's perspective, there's really 2 teams, in this tournament, in this bracket, that are kind of playing with house money a little bit. One of them's Columbia. The other one is Lakeland. But, you have essentially nothing to lose if you're Columbia here. I mean, you're the 8 seed. You kind of not necessarily snuck into the state tournament, but really had to fight and play your way into this state tournament by beating Ridgeview in the district tournament. And, with Shelly being the favorite and, being undefeated and all that, you can just kind of lay it all out there. But Robertson's going to have a big day for Columbia to win that game. But if she's hot and she is hitting her shots and getting rebounds, assists, points, all that, and Shelly can't slow her down, that's how Columbia is going to stay in and potentially win that game. But if she gets taken out early in that game by that Shelly defense, might be a long day for Columbia.
Yeah, Shelly, of course, has Brinley Cannon, the phenomenal point guard, and a BYU commit. And then we also have, Mia Williams, who's a great, secondary scorer for Shelly. The big question is, okay, who's that third scorer? Who's the third person when, because now you're at state. Everybody's got a defender to shut down one, and some teams have two defenders to shut down two. So the question is, who is that third option? Here's Lisa Lizama. Let's go BK Knights. Shout out to cousins, Kira Lizama, and then Jordan Carnell, the point guard. Jordan Carnell was the 6th man of the year last year in the SIC. Now she stepped into the starting point guard role and is phenomenal. Yeah, so Ryan, you mentioned that BK Lakeland matchup. Now, I think you might be sleeping on Lakeland just a little bit. They did just beat Sandpoint, the defending champs, 2 out of 3. And then they also played Pocatello earlier this year at the East Idaho Holiday Shootout and lost by a possession in overtime. And they've got a 6-footer in Landry Simon who can cause some problems and some disruptions. To me, the matchup is Addie Leibel for BK, their star center, against Landry Simon for Lakeland. Whoever wins that matchup, I think, probably wins the game.
Yeah, and I don't want to, the hard part is, and I tell everybody this, and I'm from Idaho, so I can say this, we have 3 states in the state of Idaho. We have East Idaho, we have North Idaho, and then we have kind of Twin Falls West. And the problem is that we don't see anybody from North Idaho. It's legitimately so far away, 8 hours if you're driving from here, from the Boise area. So if I'm sleeping on North Idaho, I apologize, because that is because I have not been to North Idaho in a long time, and it's in my own state. The reality is in sports in general, when we're talking about North Idaho, we don't know what we have because there's so few teams on that larger larger classification level that we just don't know what we have. I mean, you look at like Coeur d'Alene in football, they came in and they kind of ran it, went to the, to the state championship. Well, nobody saw that coming, right? And we can say as much as we'd like, and I know, Brandon, you're up there now, so maybe you can give us more insight. We just really don't know what we have versus these, we'll call them the metro teams here in the valley, in the Treasure Valley. So going back to BK playing tough competition week in and week out. I mean, you can liken it to, say, maybe the SEC or whatever, but they played more than 4 5A teams, but they lost to 4 5A teams. You talk about the center matchup and that post play, which has been critical to them. Everything goes through that post, and they run the post, everything through that. So again, I'm not sleeping on North Idaho. I just don't know what they have, and I don't know if they've played a team like a BK.
Right. And that's the hard part, that every coach pulls their hair out. How do we evaluate these teams from the north, for sure? Let's go to the bottom half of the bracket. Here's Ryan Allen. Good luck, Jerome Tigers. Shout out to my 2 girls, Emma and Autumn. This is a team that was the walking wounded this year on this bottom half of the bracket. The Jerome Tigers come in as the number 7 seed. They did not have their full complement of players, guys, until basically when their season was on the line at districts in a loser-out game against Mountain Home. And even for like the first half, as they were reincorporating all of these players, it looks kind of funky and out of sorts. And you're like, boy, is Jerome going to pull this thing out or what? And then it's like a light switch clicked, and Jerome took out Twin Falls pretty easily to get to state. First time to state, Lucas, since 2010. What an accomplishment for Jerome High School.
Yeah, and then finally getting the Twin Falls monkey off their back, if you will, too. They get a big win over Twin Falls over the weekend to punch their ticket to the state tournament. And what a job this coaching staff and Kelly Williams and her second season has done there at Jerome. And obviously Scott Burton, our good friend, and usually calling the 4A tournament, but hey, he's celebrating it with his Tigers this time around. So huge shout out to Scott and Coach Williams and that whole staff there, because Jerome's back in the state tournament. That's a big deal for this program. Just knowing Scott and having a little bit of insight into what's going on in that program. This is a big deal for Jerome. This is a big deal for that program. It was one of the biggest wins probably since they were last at state in 2010, or even when they won the state championship back in 04, early 2000s. So That was a big win for them, and I'm excited to see how they come out Thursday. It's going to be a tough matchup for them, but it's just exciting to see some new teams in the state tournament. But tough ask to go up against Pocatello. Pocatello is a pretty good team.
Yeah, on the other side of the coin, Ryan. Hey, congrats! You made it to state. Good luck against Pocatello in the first round. Jerome's tallest player is Emily Lloyd at 5'10". Well, Pocatello goes with Kenna Garza at 6'2", 6'3", and then Abby Lusk, who's just a silky smooth, 6-footer as well. I'm just worried about Jerome's ability to counteract all that height that Pocatello has.
Yeah, so Jerome went 19-5, and teams don't go 19-5 for no reason. They absolutely can do something, and a lot of theirs is schematics. Like you said, good coaches make adjustments to height differential, and not only that, good players. Maybe it's a box and one or something like that, and that's been Jerome's, marching orders. Now the problem is you can't do like a 2 and you chase 3 people around, so that matchup may be difficult, but the quickness, some of that full court press action, and then taking good shots, clean shots, can keep him in the game long enough. Again, 19-5, that's nothing to pass over. I think we have to be very cognizant of that. Now, Pocatello, like you said, state seed number 2 in terms of the rankings. They kind of went up and down through the Max Preps rankings throughout the year, but very close to the top the whole season. And it is on the back of their big, tall, athletic players. And Garza, you mentioned Garza, Lusk, Hagler, some of those, they do great things. And it's tough to lock down all 3 at the same time. And I think that's what Jerome's going to face, but it can be done. It certainly can be done. You just have to put a good game plan together.
Yep. Scott Burton says, let's go Jerome Tigers. And Sean Kane, our East Idaho prepcaster, Abby Lusk is a problem because she can step out and hit a 3 as well. Kenna Garza, quick shout out, crossed the 1,000 point mark for her career. She's only a junior. That's tough to do as a junior. So we're looking forward to, what she has next year as well for her senior season. But yeah, that Pocatello Jerome matchup will be interesting. And then the final matchup at the bottom here, Skyline and Minico. This one to me, Lucas, is the hardest one to gauge. I could see a scenario where either one of these teams not only wins, but maybe the winner of this game specifically gets all the way to the championship.
Exactly. Yeah. And, with Minico, obviously, they have one of the better players in the tournament, and CJ Lotta, senior, going to Utah State. But, Skyline is another team that I don't know where they've been in the latest media poll. I mean, this team is, went through Blackfoot to get to the state tournament, and the Max Prep rankings, I think, speak for themselves. Here they are at the number 3 seed, and I think you're exactly right. This is a team that I think it's a tough matchup against Minico, but Minico is a great team at the 6th seed too. So I think you're exactly right. I think the winner of this game has a really good shot to get to the state championship, and kind of projecting ahead to what our Friday games might look like. Pocatello against the winner of Skyline Minico, I think, will be a fantastic game too. So I think there's 3 of those 4 teams, and not to take anything away from Jerome, but I think 3 of those 4 teams, talking about Pocatello, Skyline, and Minico, I think those 3 teams have a very realistic shot to go to the state championship and flip a 3-headed coin to decide which one it's going to be.
Yeah, the one problem with Skyline, Ryan, is that they don't have a ton of height. The one player that had height, Amy Basic, injured, got an injury during volleyball season, has missed the entire year. Shea Shippen's 5'10", and she can go down low and bruise if need be. But it's tough to ask her to do that 3 games in a row. The good news is Minico doesn't have a lot of height either. But if we're looking ahead to, let's say it's Skyline Pocatello, you go, okay, well, Pocatello's got Garza at 6'3" and Lusk at 6 foot. And how do you counteract that? To me, it's almost like, well, how is Pocatello going to defend Shea Shippen? One of those 2 is going to have to guard Shea, and I think she's going to be able to beat them to her spots offensively.
Yeah, so Skyline is a very athletic team, and they do it based on the back of running the floor really well, hitting transition shots, and getting up and down the floor. And that is a great way to neutralize a larger team, is to keep them on their heels and moving back and forth. Now, the counterpoint to that is that some of those some of the taller players, if we're looking ahead to Pocatello, but let's not jump to that too soon. But if you were to say look ahead to that, is that they're very athletic girls themselves. So, but going back to this matchup, I like it, but I really want to be honest when I say I think Skyline is so athletic. I think they get up and down the floor really well, and they shoot really well. If you have somebody who's averaging, let's just call it 24 points a game, again, there's a reason that they do that. She finishes around the rim really well. She shoots mid-range jumpers really well. She controls the ball really well. And so I'm not overlooking Minico because great team, and they perennial put somebody out there and they could challenge, quite frankly. But Skyline's the number 2 team for a reason. They pushed Shelley, right? And we go back and they lost to Shelley by 2 points in their second matchup. They pushed them. So my point is I think that they're peaking at the right time at the season, and it's all about momentum when you start getting into the playoffs type scenarios.
And yet Minico, CJ Lotta could decide to go off for 40 and, call it that. She did set the new record that was a year old that Amari Whiting had previously set from Burley. And then CJ Lotta beat the scoring record last year for most points in a single state tournament. So it's going to be really fun to watch. Well, here are our 4A players to watch. It's a bunch of names we've already mentioned. Jordan Carnell from BK, Ellie Robertson from Columbia, Emma Allen from Jerome, Landry Simon from Lakeland, CJ Lotta from Minico, Kenna Garza from Pocatello, Brinley Cannon from Shelley, Shay Shippen from Skyline. Lucas, which player are you most excited to see here?
Yeah, I think most excited. I think it's, the 2 Division I commits we have there, and Cannon obviously with Shelley, but also over in Minico as well with CJ Lotta. I mean, those are 2 Division I commits. So anytime you have a future Division I talent on the floor, that's obviously exciting. But kind of going a little deeper on the list there, I'm excited to see Robertson play for Columbia. I think she could really be an X factor for Columbia, especially on day one. Look for her to have a big afternoon. They play at 2:00 local time over at Timberline on Thursday, but she has a big afternoon and she can keep Columbia in the game against Shelley. All you got to do is be in the game late to have a chance to win the game, especially in the state tournament, especially kind of in that early window too. So I'm going to go, other than the 2 obvious ones, I'm going to go with Robertson for Columbia.
Ryan, you got one standout you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, Brinley Cannon. So she's a 6'1" point guard. So we talked about height out there. Not only is she 6'1" and she can block shots and she can move and rebound really well, she controls the ball. Everything runs through her. The offense starts and ends with her until she decides it doesn't. And that's a tough challenge. Now, her biggest task, don't get in foul trouble. If Brinley Cannon does not get into foul trouble and her endurance, her conditioning, her training's up to par, I think, quite frankly, she could literally carry this team to a state championship.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting for sure. Okay, let's get official championship predictions here. But before we do that, a couple of comments here in the chat. Tim Brocious says, let's go Bishop Kelly. And Everly wants to remind us, hey, Skyline's the 3 seed, Pokey's the 2. The Thunder beat Skyline by double digits this year. And yes, that's what makes forecasting this field so difficult, because Bishop Kelly beat Jerome, but it was only by 5. Jerome lost to Minico twice. Pocatello split with Minico this year. Pocatello did beat Skyline, but they lost to Shelley twice. Skyline lost to Shelley twice as well, but they pushed them both times. I mean, there's just a lot. And Pocatello beat Lakeland, but it was in overtime. Everybody is pretty evenly matched here. It's going to be really fun. So let's get your official championship predictions here. Lucas, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm going to start at the top half of the bracket. I just can't really see any way around Shelley not getting to the state championship. I think they have the easier path than being at the top half of the bracket than the bottom half of the bracket. So I'm going to go ahead and put Shelley in the state championship. And gosh, bottom half of the bracket's really tough, but I like Skyline. Skyline, they're playing well right now. And playing well. Here's the deal with the state tournament. It's basically a 1-game playoff to advance through this bracket, right? I know you get the 2-game guarantee, but you want to win your first game to be on that right side of the bracket. I think Skyline's peaking at the right time, and Ryan hit on that earlier. So I like Skyline and Shelley to play each other in the state championship, and I just can't see any way that I can't pick Shelley to win this thing. Unbeaten kind of speaks for itself for me. So,
Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, if we just go pure March Madness, we would say, okay, hey, it's Shelley versus Pocatello. Obviously, I'm picking Shelley at the top, even though I said at the beginning I think that they have a harder path because they theoretically have to get through Bishop Kelly and or Lakeland, who we know nothing about, but we know everything about. The bottom half, and I would just pretty much mirror and echo everything that Lucas said, and we broadcast so much together. I wonder if we're sharing a brain right here because I'm thinking Skyline's the same thing. Now, here's the only problem is if Pocatello can get big, right? If they can get big, then I think they stop them. But I actually think it's going to be Skyline Shelley, and then Shelley's going to pull the trifecta and beat them 3 times in the same season for the state championship.
Yeah, and I love that a lot of these teams have already faced each other and there's some familiarity. I misspoke earlier. I said Minico swept Jerome. Ryan reminds me Jerome did beat Minico once. It came by 3 points. And I think there's going to be a lot of very close games throughout this 4A state tournament. Gentlemen, thank you. Good luck at the 4A state tournament. Coverage on IdahoSports.com. You guys will be broadcasting from Timberline, right? Okay.
I hope
so. That's what we were told.
You show up to an empty gym. That'd be really fun. So, All right, there's your 4A state preview. We'll take another break, come back to break down the 3A bracket. We are about 15 minutes behind on the live stream. I apologize. So 3A preview coming up next. You're watching the 2024 Idaho High School Girls Basketball State Tournament preview special on IdahoSports.com.
Dear all-wheel drive, let's show the road what we've got. Yours, Toyota.
Toyota has 22 all-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive vehicles, more than any other brand. Toyota, let's go places.
We're back on the IdahoSports.com 2024 Girls Basketball State Tournament preview special here to break down the 3A state basketball tournament with Logan Green. LG, we've talked about how so many of these tournaments are wide open and competitive. This tournament, to me, is the most open. I could make a case for legitimately all 8 teams that are here.
Yeah, there is, so many times I've looked through this bracket and thinking, oh, this team's going to win it. And then I dig a little deeper and then I want to change my mind and have lots of thoughts on, if we'll get into it later, but like if teams were in a different spot, I like them to make a run. But man, it's going to be a really fun time at Middleton High School for these games. One glaring thing, you look at it and somebody's not there. I think that's the first thing you notice, right? Is we're so used to Sugar Salem being in everything. And I know you don't want to talk about somebody who's not here, but that is something to discuss, right? They're not on this bracket. And but the thing is, this tournament is loaded with team. All the team, these are the same players year in and year out. It is, most of this bracket has been here over the last 7 or 8 years. It is, I think Timberlake has missed it once in that time frame, and Snake River has been every year, and Parma's missed it once in this time frame, and almost the whole bracket is the same as last year, almost. And then you've got American Falls, who hasn't been in 20 years, something like that. It's going to be a really good time.
Yeah, it's like an old family reunion, right? Everybody's getting back together.
Yeah.
And
hey.
You mentioned, we'll put the bracket up here on the screen. You mentioned, a team that wasn't here. I thought you were going to talk about McCall Donnelly. That was the best state play-in game from this past Saturday, Kimberly and McCall Donnelly, where McCall Donnelly thinks they've just hit the game-winning basket with 2 seconds left, gets wiped out due to a double dribble call, and Kimberly hangs on to win by a point, 45-44. If that's the first quote unquote state game for 3A, Logan, we're in for a good tournament.
If that's a sign of things to come, buckle up. Should be a fun one.
All right, well, let's take a look at this bracket. These games are at Middleton High School on IdahoSports.com. Opening round Thursday, noon. It's 4 versus 5. Oh, hey, Parma and Fruitland, district rivals. Gotta love that.
Do district rivals, do they like that? Like, we've got 2 of them in this tournament. We've got the 4-5 as a district game and the 2-7 as a district game. No love lost between these 2 teams, these 4 teams, I should say, and a lot of familiarity. I can't speak right. But I mean, these are 2 teams, Parma and Fruitland, that just met for the district championship.
Yep. And same at the bottom, right? 2 versus 7
Yeah.
at 5 o'clock. Snake River and American Falls in the undefeated semifinal. Snake River won by 3 in overtime. And then in the true championship, they did beat American Falls, but it was a pretty tightly contested game throughout. You've got Teton, the 1 seed. They're playing number 8 Kimberly. And then also the 3 versus 6 Timberlake up against Filer there. We've already got a comment in here, Logan. Let me get it up on the screen. And if you've got questions or comments, all my 3A hoop fans, throw them in the comments. We'll throw them up on the screen. Give your favorite team, player, coach a shout out, or you can ask us a question. Here, Melissa says, good luck, Teton. And I guess the conversation kind of has to start there, right? They are, if you were going to pick one team as the prohibitive favorite, they're the number 1 seed. They've lost once this year to Sugar Salem. And like you said, hey, Sugar's not here, so they don't got to worry about that. And yet, this is a Teton team that has gotten to the championship pretty recently, again, against Sugar Salem.
Right.
But I feel apprehensive somewhat saying Teton's the favorite. Talk me out of this, Logan.
Brandon, I don't know. See, every time I'm like, no, I have the same thought that I think Teton, it's there. I come into it and thinking it's Teton's to lose. But then I look at the other teams and how competitive they've been, and I just don't know. I mean, okay, you look at Teton and what they've done this year and tournament teams that they've beaten on the year, right? Across classifications. They beat North Fremont, a district champion. They've already beat American Falls this year. They beat North Fremont twice, I should say. They've beaten Snake River. They've beaten Bonneville, Lakeland, a qualifier at the 4A level. They beat them by 20 points. So you look at that and say, Teton, they have earned their spot. They have deserved to be the number 1 ranked team. They deserve to be the number 1 team in the polls unanimously. I guess I'll say that. I think they deserve to be where they're at. And that is not up for debate. I think that is it. Conversation over. Now, will that translate to a tournament? I don't know. Brandon, you look at the last over the last month, it has been January 4th was the last time that Teton played a team that's in the state tournament. Not that you play state tournament teams every night, right? But it's been over a month since they've played a state tournament team. And so that would be maybe something I would look out for, because I tell you what, Brandon, the winner of that 4-5 game, I think if you put them in the bottom half of the bracket, they're in the state championship. That is I think Parma or Fruitland has the skills to do it and could force an upset over Teton, whoever it is that comes out of that. But if they were in the bottom half of the bracket, I think one of those two would be in the championship.
We're getting all sorts of comments here, Logan. I love it. Jamie says Teton is a force and the best. She adds, you will not see a group of ladies that play as fluid as this team. And that was the next point I was going to make about Teton is they've got so many fluid athletes with Morgan Johnson and Reese Coons and Abby Barkdale, who kind of gets forgotten about, but she's a phenomenal athlete as well. Great soccer player also. And Brock says, I'm going to be watching Reese Coons toss those one-handed free throws. This I got to see, Logan.
Yeah, that should be fun to see. It's always fun for a unique thing. And you know what is scary? I think what makes me end up leaning towards Teton is their experience, right? This is a team that is heavy loaded, that has been there. You talked about it earlier with some other tournaments where you thought maybe a Middleton, for instance, was maybe a year away. They needed to get that experience before they won a championship. I think Teton has already had those lumps. They've already gone through that, and they're ready to go. And those seniors, those upperclassmen, want to go out with a championship. So Teton is going to be a tough out for sure.
Yep. Let's talk about their first round opponent quickly here. Kimberly, they did beat Filer earlier this year, Logan. It snapped a 40-game winning streak that Filer had enjoyed over its conference opponents, both regular season and postseason. And they pushed Filer pretty tight at the district tournament as well. They lost 45-41 in the undefeated semifinal. They lost the true championship by only 6. They did get that 1-point win over McCall Donnelly. They've got some good post play with Macy Dill but a younger team, Taya Plu as a freshman is one of their top players. And so I wonder if Kimberly is just a year away, possibly against a very veteran Teton squad that's used to being at state.
And, they they played in the Parma tournament back in December, and they got 2 wins there. The first 2 games made it to the finals against Weiser, and in the process knocked off Parma, right? A state tournament team that I think is really solid. So, you just never know when you get into a tournament. But I echo the same sentiments. Have they been pushed enough lately? We'll find out. They've been able to knock out. They beat Filer during the year, right? They were able to beat Parma. They've got 2 wins over state tournament teams. That's always something I go straight to look at and say, what have you done against the field? And you look at it right there and you say, Kimberly has won some games. They've lost some, that's for sure, but they have won some, so they have the ability to get it done.
Yeah, here's Chris. He says Parma is so tough. If they hit their threes, they are going to go far. Logan, based on my experience covering state, that is a tough way to go try and win a championship.
You see it in the NCAA tournament, right? It is you hit it or you don't, right? And if you do, you look at Princeton last year, right? Go as a 15 seed, makes it to the Sweet 16 because they could hit it, but then when it's not hitting, you're in a tough spot. But I think Parma, that is my dark horse, Brandon. I know I might be jumping the gun here, but Parma is my dark horse. I think they have the ability. They have players in different positions that can get it done. I mean, everybody, kind of goes to the main ones for Parma, right? You've got Riley Calkins, Sidney Jackson, Ari Harris that are right there. But I did a Parma game a couple of weeks ago against Weiser, went to overtime. Calkins did not play in that game. So that was something, she wasn't playing in that game. And somebody else stepped up. It was Daisy Hardcastle. She had like 19 points in the second half of that game. And she was very quiet in the first half, came out of nowhere, goes on a roll. And I think Parma can do that. That's why I think they're dangerous. I think they can do it from different positions. And if you look at Parma's schedule, they have a lot of games. Yeah, they have a couple of losses on the season, but most of them, they lost to that team and then they played them again and they won. And I think that shows me what I want to see from a team, right? That you don't get a whole game to make those changes, but you get a halftime break, right? And I can see that Parma and Coach Calkins can make those changes. And I think that's what makes them dangerous, is that they can adjust on the fly. They can flip a loss into a victory, and they can take a bad first half and turn it into a great second half.
Yep. It's going to be interesting to see with Parma. They do have great balance. That was the key to their semifinal win over McCall Donnelly at districts was while McCall Donnelly's Gabby Green led all scorers with 18 points, only 3 players total scored for the Vandals, whereas Parma had 6 different players get between like 5 and 12 points, which is really good balance for sure. They play Fruitland in the first round. Obviously, they've encountered each other a lot this year.
Yeah.
Fruitland's got, Alexi Drollinger and Bailey Van Hofwagen's a pretty good guard. Brooke Hardy can be a problem inside. She's such a great athlete, phenomenal volleyball player too. Parma has the recent momentum, and yet it was only a 2-point win, 39-37 in that district championship. To me, it's which team can get the most out of its bench in this matchup.
Yeah, and that's Parma plays most everybody, and like you said, really balanced. And here's the thing, Brandon, too. These two play, and what I think is the most competitive conference, right? Maybe there's others that you could say are better, whatever you want. But they had to deal with McCall Donnelly and Weiser night in and night out. There were 4 teams at the top of that conference that were just trading blows with each other. And I think they come in having traded a lot of blows down the stretch, more so than any other team in the tournament. And that's what I like about both of them. That's why I said if you put them away from Teton, I think they could make a run. But yeah, that should be what a great way to kick off game number 1 of the tournament.
For sure. And then at the bottom half of the bracket, here's Mallory Jensen. She says, let's go American Falls. Couple of Jensens on that Beavers team. I'm going to guess they're related. Mallory, you let us know in the chat. And then Everly says, watch out now that Riley is back for Snake. It was supposed to be a season-ending injury. Yes, Riley Edlifson, the reigning 3A player of the year for Snake River, all-state point guard, breaks her hand, misses a month of action. She returns for basically the district championship against American Falls, scores 6 points in, about 20 minutes of play, but she also had 6 assists. And that's the key is Snake doesn't need her to go out and score 20. If she can get to 8 or 10 and facilitate others, Reese Baldwin and, Dunn and some of these other great players for Snake, they're going to be right in the mix. They are the defending 3A state champs.
Yeah. And you're like you said, yeah, they've got all the pieces. When she went out, yeah, a lot of people thought maybe it wasn't looking good for Snake River. Maybe a window has opened, and you know what? It makes a team just as maybe even more dangerous, right? Because your team learned how to adjust to play without her, right? And now all of a sudden she's back, and now you've grown as a team, and you've learned how to play without her and lean on other people. They might have stepped in new positions that they weren't used to doing, or taken a shot they weren't used to taking, or taking that drive that they would have usually kicked out. And now they're in a different spot and they're a better team out of it. But Brandon, it is very hard to beat a team 3 times. It's extremely hard to beat a team 4 times. It is darn near impossible to beat a team 5 times in a season. And that's what Snake River is going to have to do. And it has gotten progressively closer every time. They have not just had one of those we absolutely crushed American Falls type games. I know you look at American Falls record, 4 of those losses have come against Snake River. That's a tough, that is a tough way to lose 4 games. And man, this is a team that took care of business against South Fremont. Man, if there's going to be an upset in this tournament, it is this first game. And American Falls they are here for the first time in a long time, and they are going to come out. And I think that they are going to be more, I think they're going to be ready. I think they're going to be more relaxed. The pressure is not on them. I feel like it's on the defending state champs, and they can come in a different site location than usually facing their nemesis. And I think they've got a shot.
Yeah, here's Chris Ann in the comments. Don't count American Falls out like you did in the play-in game. Logan, for my final girls basketball bracketology, I predicted every single game that took place on Saturday. There were 12, either state play-in games or district games that were essentially state play-in games. I went 4-8. All right, I didn't do great, and I alienated a lot of people that are now at state. So I definitely get. Yeah.
Don't worry, everybody. We know bulletin board Baney very well. This is what we call him. He just produces bulletin board material. Your state championship should be credited to Brandon, because he probably ticked you off enough to put you into the state championship. I'm just kidding, but yeah, it is just so hard, right, to pick it. We look at this stuff all the time, right, in our jobs, and then we're wrong. It's like we're great weathermen. We'd be great weathermen, right? It's just so hard because teams have it in them, and it just comes out at different times in different ways.
Yeah. We asked Mallory earlier in the chat about the Jensen girls from American Falls. She says they are sisters. That would be Eden Jensen, freshman point guard, who's really stepped into her own, and then Addison Jensen, who's a junior, leads the team in scoring a lot of the time. And that's the thing I wanted to bring up about American Falls is they do such a good job of blocking out all that exterior noise. It's all about what are we doing today. And this is a team that has 2 seniors, Shelby Smith and Jade Smith. And again, somebody from American Falls can correct me, but I'm pretty sure they're not related. It's just 2 Smiths, or maybe they're cousins or something. But otherwise, it's all juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, Logan. And nobody told them, hey, you're supposed to lose to Snake and you're supposed to lose bad, or hey, you're supposed to lose to South Fremont. Nobody told them that, and they show up and play and they compete. And here's Mallory again. Yeah, the Smiths are cousins. Okay, so that's what the 2 Smiths are. But that's the thing that I've been really impressed with about this American Falls team.
Yeah, and they're young, and they're gonna be a problem next year too. If they've got all these pieces and they've made it here, they're not gonna want to skip out next year as well. I'm anticipating a very good 2-7 game on Thursday. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people expect. It's going to be good. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. But if there's an upset in this first round brewing, it's right there.
Okay, our final matchup, 3 versus 6, Timberlake and Filer. Each team took different paths here, but both are used to basically dominating their league, right? We talked about Filer's 40-game winning streak against the league earlier. Timberlake lost to Bonners Ferry in the first game of their best of 3 championship series by 2 points, 55-53. Bonners Ferry hadn't beaten Timberlake in over 24 tries, 10 years we're talking about almost. That's how long the losing streak went there. And then they barely won the second game, 46-43. And then they blow out Bonners Ferry in the third and final game of the series, 64-25. And Coach Matt Miller, who's been doing this a really long time, had a good quote to the Coeur d'Alene Press after that win. And he said, basically, with our team, are we going to show up mentally and, be prepared to play and put in the work? And he said, we did tonight, but it's a work in progress. And they're having to do all of this without their best player, Malia Miller, who as a freshman last year burst onto the scene, but she's been out all year with an injury. And so that's Timberlake's biggest problem, is finding out who is that leader, who's that person that you can point to with 2 minutes left in the game and say, get me the ball, I'll make a play.
Yeah. And, they're a very good and balanced team, right? MacArthur's averaging 8 points, Nelson 9, Young just under 8, Needs 7.2, and McKellips with 11. So extremely balanced, right? They have a bunch of players that can get it done, but at a tournament time, like you said, Brandon, you need somebody that's in a tie game, in a hostile environment at a state tournament, that says, enough, I'm taking over this game. This is mine. I am punching our ticket to the next round. And it'll be interesting to see for Timberlake, who's going to step up, who out of that crew that has very balanced scoring is going to say, it's a team game, right? But at some point in some situations, you got to have somebody that just is her, right? As they say, him or her, whatever. They need somebody to step up, and we're not saying that they can't, but who is it going to be? I think we'll see that from Timberlake. I think they'll turn it on, and you know what? They just started a new winning streak against Bonners Ferry. The old one was old and stale. They got kind of bored with it, so they wanted to start a new one. That's what I heard, right? But then they're going to face Filer again, and we talked about Filer, and again, these are two teams that, like you said, roll through their conference. So it's always fun to see those two type of teams go up against each other, right? Two teams that are used to having their way, all of a sudden meet somebody that won't let them have their way. And, this will be a really tough matchup for both teams in the first round. I think it'll take them some time to feel each other out, right? Maybe a quarter or two. This is one that I think starts off a little bit slow as they try to, feel each other out and see what each other is going to throw at them offensive and defensively. And then the second half will really turn up.
Yeah, Filer's got two great athletes in Allie Bishop and also Hazel Fisher. Bishop's 5'11". They have Reese Hills at 6'2", and they've got a sophomore transfer from Wendell in Tanley Lemoyne, who is capable of getting hot too. So it's going to be a really fun matchup. Logan, as we were talking about that Snake River American Falls matchup, here's Mark Edlifson. I'm going to guess related to Riley.
Yeah.
Thank you for fueling Snake River's fire. Hey, if it leads to another championship for your girls, you're welcome. That's what I'll say.
I'll say I'm rooting for everyone, right? Yes. I don't, it's just, I'm just looking for a good time, right? Prove me wrong. I wasn't saying they were going to win. I'm just saying if there is an upset, that would be one to watch out for. But you know what? Snake River they've just rolled through their season too. So they have earned their number 2 seed here in the tournament.
Yep. All right. Here's the 3A players to watch. We picked one from every team. Just a jumping off point here. Addison Jensen from American Falls, Hazel Fisher from Filer, Alexi Drollinger from Fruitland, Macy Dill from Kimberly, Riley Calkins from Parma, Riley Edlifson from Snake River. They spell their name the exact same way. How ironic is that? Calkins and Edlifson. Reese Coons from Teton, Kirsten McKellips from Timberlake. Logan, give me one player you're most excited to watch here.
I'm looking forward to seeing Riley Edlifson. I know I just got called out in the comments for it, but I mean, she is a phenomenal player. I'd love to see her come back from that injury and just tear it up on the court, right? Commit to NNU, I believe, right, Brandon? For her, it's going to be fun to watch her play in this tournament.
Yep, for sure. Okay, quickly give me a championship prediction, because here's Paul Kingsbury. Can't wait for the 2A preview to start. That means we've gone along.
Get out of here.
Very quickly.
Our red button is on.
Yes.
Brandon, I think the championship, I think it's 1-2. I think it's Teton versus Snake River at the end of the day, but I think it's the winner of the semifinal game in that top half of the bracket that wins it. If Parma or Fruitland pulls off the upset, I think they win the state championship. I think it'll come down to that matchup, and whoever it is, I think they pull it off.
Melissa's with you, Logan. Teton versus Snake River. So there you go. All right.
Yeah.
Logan Green on the call for the 3A state tournament from Middleton High School. Thank you, Logan. We will take a break and come back with the much anticipated 2A girls state tournament preview right after this break. You're watching the 2024 Idaho High School girls basketball state tournament preview special on Idaho. Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com girls basketball state tournament preview special. Time to talk 2A girls state tournament with Paul Kingsbury and Lauren Jensen. They'll be on the call for the 2A state tournament. Gentlemen, thank you for hopping on. Before we get to the bracket and start breaking down these 2A matchups, we did have a question in the chat about officiating at state, and I thought this would be a perfect question for you, Lauren, because you have dabbled in officiating in your life. So and when I say dabbled, he's a great referee. Here's the question. It's from Howard. Referees from across the state have different styles / perspectives on the way they call the games based on, calling it tight versus letting them play. Do you think it favors any one team or division of the tournament, Lauren? What do you think about that?
I don't think so. I think within your own your own conference, so like District 6 refs versus District 4, you have varying styles within your district as officials. And so, something I might call or key in on, other guys that I ref with don't. Now, so I think that's very, very unlikely. Maybe a call here or there, but to really affect a game in its entirety, I don't think that's, and there's 3 officials out there, and most of the time those guys are split crews. You're not going to have guys until you get to the championship games if you have similar conference, but then those guys are working with each other and working for both teams anyways. So I just don't think it affects it like that. There's too much variability.
Yes. That was a good question, though, and that's what we want from you, the fans. So 2A girls fans, give your favorite team, give your favorite player, give your favorite coach a shout out, ask a question, throw it in the chat. We'll throw it up on the screen. Here's Linda. Go Melba Lady Mustangs. You rock. We are always exciting, Paul. And that's, if we look at this bracket, Paul, that's kind of the big story this year, at least to me, in 2A girls basketball, is there's kind of this big 3, right? It's Grangeville, it's Coal Valley Christian, it's Melba. That now you're looking at a 1, a 3, and a 5 seed. There was some consternation about max preps because for most of the season, those 3 teams were all on the top half of the bracket. That finally kind of sorted itself out a little bit, but man, where do you start when you look at this bracket? What stands out to you the most?
Well, I think starting at the very beginning is a good place to start. North Fremont, Melba, North Fremont, a good record on paper. Let's see if they can get by Melba. Melba, number 5 seed. Are they really in the bottom half of the bracket? I mean, and as far as 1 through 8, 5 is below 50%. That's what I meant. I don't think so. I think they're better than the number 5 seed. And head coach Dave Lentz is going to get them ready. I watched them play once this year. They're a very good team, and I think you were right to say that's the big 3. And 2 of those 3 are coming out of the WIC, and Coal Valley and Melba know each other very, very well. Over the past few years, they've played each other. I mean, I think Melba's lost 15 games in the last some odd years, and Coal Valley's been 8 of them. So. It's a rivalry in the WIC, and here they are in the state tournament.
A little counterpoint for you guys. Lamont, here's the point. Melba gonna make a run. Counterpoint from Morgan, North Fremont all the way. So, okay. Lauren, we talk about North Fremont, and they are a very good, talented team. Ben Lenz has been coaching the Huskies for ever, like since the late 90s, I feel like. Always has his girls playing well. I feel bad for them because they got a really tough first-round matchup here with a Melba team that's really good.
Yeah, and you take a look at North Fremont's roster, and it's a lot of names you recognize from up there in Ashton. You've got Cherry, Lenz, two Cherries, Stegelmeyer, Orm, Hess, Hill, and two Lenzes on the team. And so a lot of really recognizable names up there. And Coach Lenz, he's a great coach. Played college basketball. The guy knows what he's doing. He's a great coach. He knows how to work and teach and get everything out of his basketball team that he can. And so they're going to be tough to beat. I know Melba, one of those top big three teams, if you will, and maybe they're ranked a little lower than they should be or seated a little lower. But I think that they're going to be in for a good matchup with the North Fremont Huskies.
I didn't even think about this until we just were talking about Coach Ben Lenz is the coach at North Fremont. Dave Lenz is the coach at Melba. Paul, they're not related, are they?
I don't think so.
Just a coincidence, right?
I've asked this question before. No.
Okay. Interesting. For sure. Scott Burton says, is this the GQ/model broadcasting team? Sean says, did you not see the 5A guys? So there we go.
I think Scott's just sucking up because, he's not part of the crew. He's just feeling bad a little bit.
Yes. Tom's got a grievance from the 5A preview. Rigby should be the 2 seed in 5A. And that's the thing with Max Preps is we can all quibble about, where teams were placed, but I think we all agree still at the end of the day, it's a lot better than what it used to be, which was just random assignments based on nothing. So, go ahead, Paul. Did you want to jump in there?
Oh, I was just going to say real quick. I mean, keep in mind, Melba's the defending state champions too.
Yes.
They also won it in 2021. So 2 in the last 3 years, like they're a good team. Coach Lenz is going to have them going. That Coach Lenz is going to have them ready to play as well.
Yep.
I mean, no matter what, a Coach Lenz will be happy after that first round matchup. Just a matter of which one.
Sad.
Yes. Lamont says, I hear number 20 for Melba is super underrated.
That's probably Lincoln, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yes. Mallory.
Now Lincoln is I believe Larry's daughter, right? You guys
have to let us know in the chat.
We call him the Silver Fox. In fact, during the broadcast, and to be fair, Dave Lentz told me to say it during the broadcast to say, "Oh yeah, it's his granddaughter."
Okay.
He's got great, great guy, Larry. He wrote me and said he sent me an email and said, "Funny guy." It was all Dave, but yeah, it's his daughter.
Okay. Well, for Melba, if they get back to the championship game again, they're going to have to earn it, because if they get past North Fremont in the first round, Lauren, more than likely the number 1 seed Grangeville is going to be waiting. Renee says, go Bulldogs. Great team and great coach. What Michelle Barger has done for girls basketball in Grangeville is nothing short of incredible. She has worked with these girls from elementary age and had them develop those skills to where now when they get to high school, it's a pretty well-oiled machine. They've got a little bit of size. They've got tons of great athletes. They beat Coal Valley and Melba at the very start of the year. They have played Sandpoint to overtime this year and lost. I mean, this to me is the overwhelming favorite, Lauren.
Yeah, there's a few things that stand out to me. And the first is obviously the size of Madeline Green. I mean, she's 6'2". The information we got says she's averaging the most points in girls basketball this year at 18 points a game. And so or in the 2A. But the other thing is they've got 4 girls in double figures, averaging double figures on the season. I kind of looked at the other stats that we had, and there's a couple other teams in the 2A that have 2 girls averaging double figures. And so just scoring alone, they're going to be a big load to handle. And if they play that well together, it's going to be tough. Kellogg is a tough draw for them. That's obviously they faced them already this year. But yeah, whoever, assuming Grangeville wins, whoever gets them in the second game is going to be in for a big eye-opening surprise.
And Grangeville has 1 senior. So watch out next year already, right?
Yeah.
And the 1 senior is Madeline Green or Maddie Thacker, excuse me. And so Yeah, and then all the other players, including Green and Barger and Vanderwall, I mean, they all come back. So yeah, it's been pretty impressive. I did the 2A consolation final last year where they lost to Ryrie. Basically came down to the final 30 seconds. Grangeville threw the ball away on a pass from like 5 feet away, just threw it out of bounds. Ryrie got the ball back, had 3 cracks at the basket, and finally girl from Ryrie made it as she's falling on her backside to beat the buzzer. So for Grangeville, kind of a sour taste in their mouth. I know they're motivated to go to state and deliver. And you mentioned Kellogg. They're going to play the Wildcats, the number 8 seed. They just beat them in the district championship game, 69-42. Coach Barger says, though, Kellogg is a tough physical team that can cause some problems for people. I think maybe on the other side of the bracket, it wouldn't surprise me to see Kellogg make a run, but man, having to play Grangeville right away again, Paul, that's a tough draw.
Yeah, I got to watch Kellogg play Ambrose in that play-in game at McCall on Saturday, and they've got a lot of good players, led by 5 seniors. Jerome, I think she's about 970 points right now, so she can play 3 games, average 10 plus. She might hit that 1,000-point mark in her senior year at state, so that would be great. The Groth cousins, I mean, they have a great team there in Kellogg. They're tough, they're gritty, they're good shooters. It'll be interesting to see if they can compete against Grangeville. Like you said, they played in the district championship. They've also played, Lauren, 2 or 3 other times during the season and lost by 30-ish the other times. So they are definitely not strangers to each other.
Yep, and that's what makes the rematch tough for sure. We were asking about the Mallory Lincoln and the relation there. Chris says yes. Larry's daughter Mallory is a senior, number 20 for Melba. Here's Cade Sessions. Shout out to Taylor Sessions, number 33, and the North Fremont Huskies. And so we've kind of covered the top part of the bracket here. We'll put it up on the screen again with North Fremont and Melba, the 4 and 5, Grangeville and Kellogg, the 1 and 8. Then we get to the bottom half of the bracket, and this is where things get interesting to me, guys. This to me is kind of wide open. Let's start with the Bear Lake Bears, the number 2 seed, because Debbie giving them some love in the comments. Go Bear Lake. I think a lot of people were surprised, Lauren, to see Bear Lake as the number 2 seed. But I'll tell you what, I've been wrong about this team. I was beating the drum for Soda Springs all year, and we'll talk about them in a second. But Bear Lake, when it mattered most, beat them and snapped I think it had been, I think I read that Bear Lake had actually won a state championship more recently than they had won a district championship, which is just crazy to think about Soda's run of dominance down there in District 5.
Yeah, Soda has been the dominant team down there. And, Soda had their number early in the season. They beat them twice in the regular season. Then, like you mentioned, Bear Lake comes back and beats them twice to win the district championship. I mean, if I believe I looked at it right, they're 20-3. So as Bear Lake is on the season. And so it's tough to argue with 20-3 and say they shouldn't be the 2 seed. Now, have they played the same competition? Well, we're going to find out. That's what the state tournament's all about. We're going to find out how they match up against the rest of the conferences. But at 20-3, they're on a winning streak coming out of district tournament. They're going to be a tough team to handle.
Yeah, and Debbie says, yes, I was wrong about Bear Lake. Again, I went 4 and 8 picking all the Saturday games.
That was a very rough day for you. It was.
It was. Good thing I have no shame or embarrassment. So this Bear Lake team really, I thought, built the foundation last year when they were at districts. They were the 4 seed, I believe, and they were playing the 3 seed Malad in a loser out game, and Malad had beaten them in the regular season. But Bear Lake on that night upset Malad, knocked them out of the tournament, and set the tone for a pretty young team, I thought. And now we're seeing the fruit of that labor. Sadie Shaw is a great guard. Emery Walker is fantastic. Lily Crockett. I mean, they just have a lot of good at Taisley Neal. I mean, they just line up athletes and they're going to beat you up and down the floor. They want to make it a track meet. And so it's been pretty impressive. On the other side of, what we've got with Bear Lake, if we pull up the bracket again here, they got Declo, the 7 seed. And Paul, it is always hard for that District 4 champion because it's Declo or it's Wendell. Most years lately it's Declo, but they always get a low seed because it's only a 2-team district.
Correct. And I think Declo's come out of there this, the third time in a row. And you're right, it's been before that. But in those 5 losses, I think it's 5 of those losses were with those 5 losses, 2 of them in overtime, 1 in double overtime. So those are 3 games right there that could have flipped the other way pretty easily had a couple passes gone different or a couple shots gone in. Cody Powers, great coach down there in his second year. He's actually out of Raft River alum. Good guy, and he runs a fun program. I don't know if you're on social media much and see the Declo girls basketball team. They're always putting up pretty funny stuff, pretty entertaining stuff. They're having a good time there, and usually when you have a good time with your team, you bond, you click, and that translates well onto the court as they gel together. So it's been 34 years since Declo has won state. Is it going to be this year? Maybe not. But I think they're going to come out and have a really good showing.
Yeah, that's the tough part is they try to schedule, in the non-conference as best as they can. They did play a lot of the teams, Lauren, I think that they were relying on making it to state. Ryrie, Malad, Firth, all didn't make it. And so for Declo, they don't have a lot of data against teams that actually made this state tournament field.
Yeah, and Paul mentioned, last time they won it was 1990. I think Paul was like a junior in high school then. And so it's been a little while. Freshman. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Maybe a couple of years. But it's been a long time. But you're right. They don't have that data. And part of that is because of the conference they're in, too. As you mentioned before, just that 2-team conference. They really got to travel a lot, or you try to play bigger schools around you, and they end up playing some smaller schools as well that are there close. So a little unknown. We talk about the North schools being unknown. Declo probably a little unknown in this 2A bracket.
Yep. And then we finally get to the 3 and the 6. We've had some Soda Springs love here. Ryan says, I wouldn't sleep on Soda. I've been banging the drum for the Cardinals all year. They've been pretty consistently. I vote in the media poll, and I've pretty consistently had Soda Springs in my top 5 all year. When you look, you're going to go, wow, 13-13. Well, that's not so great, but they schedule so aggressively. They play the best teams from Utah that they can go up against. They played Sugar Salem. They played so many good quality teams. And so it's really, you got to look beyond that overall record. A couple of quick comments. Ryan says, I remember the Declo State Championship. So there you go. And Mallory in the chat as well, guys. Mallory says, you guys are doing a great job. Good info. Congrats to all teams that made it to state. Silver Fox. That's awesome. I'm glad to see the great sportsmanship there. That's awesome.
I like it. And the one thing that, it's kind of I don't know, it's been talked about much, but, Matt Groening, the coach at Soda, stepped in a month and a half ago. How long have you been coaching there? About a month and a half. They've gone through 3 coaches in 3 years, and it's just kind of a revolving door, and Matt steps in. They had a losing record at the time, and he turns them around after the first of the year. Not only has a winning record through the rest of the season, but bam, gets him to the state tournament. So Coach Groening's got it. He probably won't, because I'm sure he's a pretty humble guy. He's got to take some credit for that. Not only just you have to coach that, but you have to get the girls to buy into what you're doing as a coach stepping in mid-season. That's hard. That would be a very hard thing to do. So, kudos to Soda Springs, the whole team for making it to state.
And yet for Soda Springs, Cole Valley Christian is their reward, the number 3 seed overall. That's rough, Paul. The Cole Valley just won a district championship over Melba. They battled Grangeville pretty tight this year. And Cole Valley's got really, 6 players that are all capable of stepping up and leading the team in scoring on any given night. It's a deep team for Coach Matt Beglinger.
Well, and Tessa Orcutt, who was out most of the season with a bad sprain, she's back. So, that's kind of a little dark horse coming in. Their defensive IQ is off the charts. I've watched them play as well. Froz, 4-year starter, 15 points a game, 7 boards. 3 of their players are shooting over 30% from three-point line. They're one of those teams that if they're shooting well, you will not beat them. You just won't. And if they're not shooting well, they've got the size to go inside in the defense to get more possessions for their offense. So Yeah, Matt Beglinger's got himself a pretty darn good basketball team this year.
Yeah, and Froz did go over 1,000 points in her career earlier this year. Chris reminds us all, hey, Soda was runner-up last year. Nettie Garbett is a great player, and we're going to get to Nettie in just a second here. Everly says 22 years in a row Soda has been to state, which is just remarkable. That's what we talked about. Bear Lake has won a state championship more recently than a district championship until this year, which is just remarkable. And Soda, earned it via the play-in game over West Jefferson. West J gave him a tough game, actually, until kind of the final moments of the fourth quarter. Let's take a look at our 2A players to watch. We picked one from every team, just kind of a jumping off point to get the discussion started here. We have Sadie Shaw from Bear Lake, Hadley Froz from Coal Valley Christian, Lily Mallory from Declo, Madeline Green, the 6'2 forward from Grangeville, Macy Jerome from Kellogg, Brooklyn Daly from Melba. She crossed the 1,000 point mark in her career earlier this year. Josie Richardson from North Fremont was the IdahoSports.com player of the game in the Huskies district championship win over West Jefferson. And then Nettie Garbett from Soda Springs. Lauren, give me one player you're excited to watch from this list.
That's tough to have to narrow it down to one, but I mean, because you've got some prolific scorers there, 4 or 5 of them in that group. But for me, that Soda Springs Coal Valley game is really interesting to me. It's hard to, but Nettie Garbett going up against Froz, those two against each other in that opening, that night game on Thursday is going to be a fun one to watch. I'm excited to see both of those girls play.
Paul?
Yeah, I mean, Garbett, we've seen her play at state, and she's an exciting player. If you want me to narrow it down to 2, I'm going to go Hadley Froz, just because she's fun to watch. And I'm gonna pull one out maybe you weren't thinking of. Macy Jerome of Kellogg. Like I said, I was at McCall and watched them play on Saturday. She's a fun player to watch. She does a little bit of everything. She had, I think, 3 3-pointers in that game, had 19 points. She really led that team. And so I'm really anxious to watch her play against that Grangeville team and see how she can step it up and therefore elevating her teammates as well. So Macy Jerome, Hadley Frost, those are my 2 I'm going to be watching.
For the record, I asked you to narrow it down to 1. Both of you have failed the assignment. So no, I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Numbers are hard.
I never listened to you. So I thought you said 4. So I stopped at 2. Yeah.
It's all good. Here's Chris. Brooklyn Daly has been the starting point guard for Melba all 4 years, 2 state championships already. Does she make it 3? Time for championship predictions. Paul, what do you got?
Well, real quick, before we do championship predictions, I think it was at Melba when we did that game. But Brooklyn was our player of the game. And she's another one of those players that can put on a show.
Yeah. B Daly, number 23 shifting. And here's JJ. Yeah. Daly is legit from Melba. So, Paul, what do you got for a championship matchup in winter?
I was behind the scenes watching the 5A when I watched you do these predictions, and I'm like, oh crap. Because
now
at CUNA, we're sitting in the stands, and so everyone's around us, and so we're going to piss off 8 other teams or 6 other teams is what we're going to do.
Here's the disclaimer I always say when we make picks and stuff. All right, it's not that we hate your school or your team; these are just for fun, and we love to be wrong. If we're wrong about your team or your school, we'll come back and wear it. Let us know.
And in your case, you usually are.
I've been taking heat all night, guys. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say Grangeville comes out the top. Okay. And I'm going to say Coal Valley comes out of the bottom. Grangeville, Coal Valley in the championship. I saw it when I was watching the Instagram feed of this show, and I saw the Grangeville Bulldog account was watching. So I know they're watching. Love you guys. I'm going to pick Coal Valley. I got to pick Coal Valley on that. But I just want to say I recognize that you're here, and I appreciate it. And I could be wrong.
You
never know.
They played.
Yes.
They played almost 3 months ago to the day, November 11th, 66-62. Grangeville won that game at home. What happens on a neutral floor, we'll find out.
Yep.
Lauren,
Okay.
Do you have? Oh, and here's Coach Michelle Barger from Grangeville. Yes,
I mean Grangeville. Go Grangeville. They're gonna kill Cole Valley. Barger's who? Now Matt Beglinger's gonna get on here. Yeah.
Now, Lauren, before you make your pick, Jamie is here to tell us North Fremont Huskies have no problem shocking you all. So, what do you got, Lauren?
Well, she might be right, and I might be wrong, but I'm picking Grangeville out of the top half as well. But I'm going to go with an upset coming out of the bottom half. I'm going to pick Soda Springs to get to the championship against Grangeville. Paul's laughing at me already. I can see it in his face.
Hey, it could happen.
But between those two, that's who I'm going to have in the championship game, but we're going to go with Grangeville to win it all.
I hope it does, because that makes for an exciting state tournament when upsets happen, right?
Yeah. Unless you're Cole Valley, and then you don't hope that happens.
True.
Well, only one team can end the season truly happy, and that's whoever wins that blue trophy at state. So, all right, 2A state tournament at CUNA High School. Paul and Lauren will be on the call for it. For IdahoSports.com. Totally free, totally live to tune in and listen. So, gentlemen, thank you. Clay Hatfield has been patiently waiting. He's doing this thing where he's drumming his fingers, just waiting to see if he's ready to go on for our 1A D1 state tournament preview. And hey, Ty Kep in the chat as well, all-state quarterback and basketball extraordinaire for Kendrick. We're going to get to the Kendrick Lady Tigers here in just a little bit as well, Ty, so keep hanging out with us, all right? Up next, though, it's our 1A D1 state tournament preview. You're watching the 2024 Idaho High School Girls Basketball State Tournament Preview Special on IdahoSports.com.
As Idahoans, we're not afraid to take risks.
All the way. Go. All the way down.
Driving under the influence is not a risk we're willing to take. Be around to do more of what you love.
Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com Girls Basketball State Tournament Preview Special. Time to bring on Clay Hatfield. He's going to be on the play-by-play for all of the 1A D1 Girls State Tournament action. Clay, thank you for waiting so patiently. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. No worries.
And to all of my 1A D1 fans out there as well, thank you for waiting so patiently. We've had such good discussion tonight that we've run a little bit behind schedule. But if you are a 1A D1 fan and you've got a team, a player, a coach you want to shout out, throw it in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen because we want to hear from you, the fans. Let's start, Clay, by taking a look at this bracket, and then we'll kind of dissect it here. But here's the matchups, and this will take place at Columbia High School in Nampa. Right away at noon, 4 versus 5, Murtaugh against Prairie. That's followed by number 1, Grace, and number 8, Rimrock at 2 o'clock on Thursday. Then the 2 and 7, it's Oakley and Liberty Charter at 5 o'clock Thursday. And then the nightcap, Lapway and Valley, 3 versus 6. Clay, what's the first thing that jumps out to you when you look at this bracket?
The first one, Rimrock is an 8 seed. I mean, they have to be a little bit disappointed in that, considering they were the district champions, and they beat Liberty Charter for that title, and Liberty Charter got a higher seed than they did. So Rimrock might have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder right now.
Yeah, and Rimrock is one of those teams that just historically always seems to find a way to state. Kyla Jewett, the coach for Rimrock, does a fantastic job with a small school, small program, always gets the absolute most out of her players. And Clay, Rimrock's like, hey, what the heck? We just beat Liberty Charter for the district championship. We were told that district tournament results would factor into the Max Preps rankings, but apparently it still wasn't enough to push them over the hump.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. And that may make that Grace Rimrock game a lot closer than some people might think.
Yeah, and so Grace on the other side of the coin does come in as the number 1 seed, and this is a team kind of like Rimrock. They're used to being at state every year. It wasn't that long ago that they won the whole enchilada. They've got such a great coach in Kyle Christensen, and just a good program, and just littered with athletes, and they're tall. That's the one thing I worry about with Rimrock is, can they match up with this height that Grace has?
And that could be the downfall for Rimrock in this game, is being able to match up with the size that Grace is going to bring, and trying to figure out a way to shut down the three seniors that are going to be playing for Grace with Sydney Smith, Melody Stratman, and JC Christensen. How do you shut down all three of those players?
Yeah, and Smith's 5'10", Stratman's 5'11", Yost 6'1". I mean, that's a tall, imposing front line for sure. And yet, Rimrock's got a little secret. They've got a pretty good player that not a lot of people know about, Ashton Moore. She can walk into the gym and get 20 pretty easily. And so I think for Rimrock, this is an exciting time for them, because outside of their district, I don't think a lot of people know really what's going on at Rimrock this year. So this is their big chance.
Yeah. And they look at that number 8 seed. A lot of people look at that number 8 seed, the 8 versus 1, and just write Rimrock off right away, as being the big underdog. And I'm not ready to do that just yet.
Grace did go out and schedule pretty aggressively this year.
Yeah.
They did beat Soda Springs twice, which is a 2A state participant. They did beat Murtaugh by 6 early in the season. That's a potential semifinal matchup we could see. They split with Bear Lake, who's the number 2 seed in the 2A bracket. They played Sugar Salem. They played some good teams from Utah. They even had a New Year's Day. Did you hear about this, Clay? On New Year's Day, January 1st, Grace and Oakley played at the Delta Center in Salt Lake City, home of the Utah Jazz.
Yeah. I do remember seeing that. And what an amazing experience for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, and now, Oakley is also in this bracket, and wouldn't that be a cool match? Hey, could we petition Clay if it's Grace and Oakley in the championship? Can we go back to the Delta Center? We'll send you over there.
I'd be game. Absolutely. Absolutely. I wouldn't have any problem with that as long as the boss paid for the trip. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So yeah, Grace and Rimrock, Grace probably advances there, but who do they play? Here's Jesse in the chat. Murtaugh. This is a Murtaugh team that finally got over the hump. They're in that 4-5 matchup. They've got 4 seniors: Ashley Stanger, Addie Stanger, Briley Widmere, and Courtney Jensen. And they all got to state as freshmen, Clay. And then, you're like, hey, this was pretty cool. Let's do it every year. Well, when you're in a district with Oakley and Raft River and Valley and Cary and all these really good teams, getting to state's really hard. So they missed out their sophomore years, took 3rd. They missed out their junior year, took 3rd. This year, finally, they get over the hump. They're back at state. And now these 4 seniors are back to finish the job, as it were. But standing in their way, pretty good first-round matchup here against Prairie, which is also a perennial power in the 1A D1 circuit.
Prairie is always here at this point in the season, it seems like. And they're a younger team, Prairies, this year, with only the 1 senior on the roster with Allie Geis, and at state for the 14th consecutive year. So this is a team that has a lot of experience coming in against a Murtaugh team that hasn't been to the tournament but twice in the last almost 30 years.
Yeah, and so for Murtaugh, you wonder, and a lot of these girls are used to getting to state in volleyball, so they're, state volleyball is, but basketball is a little different than volleyball. Yeah. The hoop can look a little bigger. Murtaugh's got a really good coach in Todd Jensen. He won multiple state championships at Sugar Salem before moving on to Murtaugh, but man, something tells me, you never want to bet against Prairie and Coach Lori Mader this time of year.
No, absolutely not. And that's one of my first round upsets, I think, right there. I think Prairie has the advantage over Murtaugh. It's going to be a good game. It's a great way to open up the tournament, but I like Prairie in that 5-4 matchup.
Yeah, the key is, Prairie can bog down sometimes offensively. Lexi Schumacher, their point guard, is a fantastic player, but if she's not in a rhythm, it can be hard for them sometimes. Prairie is a team that averaged 55 points per game this year. But, all you have to do is look at their most recent district tournament. I mean, look at the championship against Lapwai, 39-27 was the final score.
Yeah.
Clay.
Yeah. Prairie's switched it up a little bit this year, playing defense when they have to, against a Lapwai team that seems like they could almost score at will at times. And to be able to hang with them in a defensive battle like that, I think says a lot about this Pirates team. They can score and they can also shut down on defense.
Yeah, so the key for this Murtaugh Prairie game, I really think, is the height, right? You've got the Stangers for Murtaugh, who are great inside players, but Prairie starts 3 girls that are 5'10". Allie Geis, who you mentioned, the lone senior, Sage Elvin, who's a sophomore, and then Kylie Schumacher, who's a sophomore. And if those sophomores can compete inside against the seniors from Murtaugh, I mean, that just boosts Prairie that much more. It's going to be really, that to me is the most interesting first round matchup of any of these games, right?
Absolutely, for sure. I think that's going to be the one to watch.
All right, let's go to the bottom half of the bracket here. Let's start with Lapwai and Valley, the 3 and the 6 seed. We did have a shout out for the Valley Vikings in the chat here. Ryan says, shout out to the Valley Vikings. Good luck at state. If there was a quote unquote Cinderella team, I think it would have to be this Valley team.
Oh yeah. They took the long way to get there. They picked the toughest path they could to make it to make it to state, but they did it. Congratulations to them.
All year long, the talk in the Magic Valley had been, well, Oakley and Murtaugh and Raft River, right? Those are the big 3. Raft River's the defending 1A D1 state champs. They beat Oakley in the championship game last year, and this Murtaugh team's really good. And District 4, after years and years and years of only getting 2 bids, got 2.5 this year. So whoever took 3rd was going to have a chance to get to state via the play-in game. And we're like, oh, sweet. Okay. Oakley, Murtaugh, Raft River. They all have a shot now. Well, somebody forgot to tell Valley they knocked out Raft River in the 4th place game at districts. And so Raft River can't even defend their title. And so here's Valley in their place. They win the play-in game on Saturday against Lakeside, the District 1 champions. And this is a team now kind of playing with house money.
Oh, absolutely. They got nothing to lose at all. They're going into it. This is their first appearance in the Division 1A. Is that true? Division 1A district or Division 1A1?
Yeah, so they were 2A for a while, and then they bounced back up and down.
Oh, since 2017. They're first since 2017.
Yeah.
So it's been 7 years since they've made it here. And I mean, why not? Go up and see what you can do against this tough Lapwai team.
Now, Ryan acknowledges tough first round draw for the Vikings. Yes, understandably so. But, you know, this time last year, Lapwai came into the tournament and basically it had been decided. Hey, you know, Lapwai's the defending champs. They're going to win it again this year. They've steamrolled everybody. Well, somebody forgot to tell Oakley that. Oakley put on one of the all-time great defensive clinics in the semifinals, knocked out Lapwai. So it can be done. I mean, Prairie just held them to 39 points in the district championship game. So if Valley can tighten up the D and force some turnovers, they're going to have a shot.
Yeah, and Lapwai can get frustrated if the game's not going their way. They can tend to try to force things a little bit. You know, we saw it last year in state where things just didn't go their way, and they kind of lost their mojo, as it were, and the wheels came off a little bit for them. You know, there were a couple injuries in the tournament that they had to overcome. But if Valley can get under Lapwai's skin a little bit, they might pull the upset off.
And I think people were quick to dismiss Lapwai a little bit this year. The big storyline in the offseason was senior Jordan McCormick Marks and her younger sister, sophomore Jalen McCormick Marks, both starters on last year's Lapwai team. Well, they crossed the border and now they're playing for Clarkston High School in Washington. So they're gone. And so everyone was like, well, geez, there goes Lapwai's, you know, two of their better players. They're probably going to take a step back. Well, what happened is the rest of the girls that did come back fortified around each other to the point where I couldn't tell you who the number 1 player to stop for Lapwai is. Some nights it's Skyland Parrish. Some nights it's Amason George. Some nights it's Jaden Layton, the center inside. Yep. Cubula Mitchell, you know, nearly had a double-double on that district championship game for Lapwai. They're a tough team to defend now.
They're deep. They have 5 players, you know, 5 starters that on, like you said, on any given night, it can be their night. You know, and we saw them go out and beat Melba earlier this year. So they're a legitimate team. You know, they have to be if they're at state for the 24th straight year. I mean, it's not by coincidence. It's not by luck. It's by, you know, it's almost a tradition for the Lapwai Wildcats to make it to state. And they're back again this year looking for a little redemption from last year's upset.
And also lost in the shuffle of Jalen and Jordan McCormick Marks transferring to Clarkston is their mom, Ada Marks, had been the coach and she's obviously now just being a mom and following her daughters. And so Josh Layton Jr., longtime assistant, now steps into the head coaching role. He's also the head football coach at Lapway also. And so it's pretty remarkable how the machine just keeps rolling. Ryan says 24 years in a row for Lapway. That's unreal. And you mentioned 2017 was the last time they made it as a 1A D1 school. Ryan does note in 2021, they did make the 2A state tournament as well. One of those years where they were ping ponging back and forth. So that's an interesting first round matchup. And then we've got the 2 versus 7 here, Clay, where it's Oakley. Actually, that's the D2 bracket, Oakley and Liberty Charter. Now, Liberty Charter is a team that always gets to state. They've been like 9-10 years in a row, but they have never gotten out of that first round. How do they solve that Rubik's Cube?
Oh man, against Oakley, they're going to have to come out and play one of the games of the season. They're going to be playing a little bit down, having dropped the District 3 title to Rimrock. So they're going to have to figure out a way to get past that loss and just focus on an Oakley team that's going to be tough to beat. It's going to be very tough to beat.
And Oakley, I really feel like, if I was a Hollywood writer and was writing a script, like Oakley would be my champion, because 2 years ago, Clay, they get to state, they have to play Raft River right away in the first round, and they lose a tight game. And then last year, they beat Lapway in the semifinals, the big heavy tournament favorite. They go, sweet, we're in the championship. Who are we playing? Oh, Raft River. Cool. Now they're back 3rd year in a row with a new coach, Kristen Jones, in her first year coaching. Well, Raft River's not here this time. I mean,
great news.
Right? I really do. I do like Oakley coming out of this bottom half of the bracket. If they play Lapway again, 2nd year in a row in the semis, what a fantastic battle that would be. I'm excited for that. Oakley they've been in a lot of close games this year. Lapway's had a lot of easy games. Oakley has been battle tested. In fact, they beat Murtaugh in the district championship by like a point. Cambry Beck had the game-winning shot, little 15-footer with like 18 seconds to go. And they've just been battle tested, and they just find a way to win time and again.
Yeah. And, and against the Liberty Charter school, I don't want to dismiss Liberty Charter at all, but that's just going to be a tough row to hoe there for the Patriots, I think.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I will say for Liberty Charter is maybe they get a little motivation, because they had beaten Rimrock in the regular season pretty convincingly, Clay, 42-20. And then they turn around and lose 33-30 in the district title match. And so maybe that gets them refocused and re-energized.
Yeah, and you know what? It could be one of those things that Oakley's looking ahead a little bit, maybe a Lapway matchup in the semifinals, and Liberty Charter sneaks up on them and pulls off the upset.
A lot of these girls, Clay, I did the 1A D1 tournament 3 years ago for IdahoSports.com, and a lot of these names, I recognize Lydia Bailey, Jenabelle Reese, Aspen Davis, Sophie Criddle, her brother Dallin Criddle was a really good player for the boys team. So again, they've been to state. That's not the problem. The problem is getting out of that first round.
Yeah.
And it's a district 3 thing in general, right?
Yes,
generally, since we've gone to max preps, the 2 teams from district 3 are generally like seated 7th and 8th, right?
Yeah. Which is, and again, for Rimrock, it's a little unfortunate. You'd think a district champ might be rated a little bit higher than that, but district 3 has something to prove this year.
And we'll see if they can get it done and navigate their way through. It will be tough, though. Let's take a look at our 1A D1 players to watch here, Clay. We picked one from every school. So we've got Sydney Smith from Grace. She was the IdahoSports.com player of the game and the Grizzlies district championship win over Butte County. Cubila Mitchell from Lapway, double-digit rebounds in that district championship game over Prairie. Jenabelle Reese from Liberty Charter. Addie Stanger from Murtaugh. Cambry Beck from Oakley hit the game-winning shot in the district championship game. Lexi Schumacher from Prairie, Ashton Moore from Rimrock, Lexi Hudig from Valley. Give me one player that you're really excited to watch.
I really am excited to see Addie Stanger from Murtaugh. This team scores almost 60 points a game to lead all 1A D1 schools, and I'm excited to see what she can do in this tournament, especially opening up against a tough Prairie team.
Yeah. We've got here in the comments here from Jenny Moore. She loves Ashton Moore from I'm telling you, she is a walking bucket. She can shoot it from anywhere on the floor. She's going to be a fun one to watch too for Rimrock.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Clay, let's get an official on the record championship prediction. I'll pull up the bracket again here. Who do you like in the championship? Who do you like to win?
Oh, dang. I hate doing this alone because I don't have anybody to help me think this through. But, I like Prairie upsetting Grace in the semifinals to make it to the championship. And I like Oakley in that lower part of the bracket. I'm looking at a 2-5 matchup for the trophy.
I love it. You got somebody you're leaning towards for the dub?
I think Oakley's this year. I think it's their year this year. I like the Hornets.
Okay. I mean, if this were Hollywood, I mean, that would be the one. I think would be Oakley. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see if it's a magical ending or not for the Oakley Hornets. Clay, looking forward to your call of the 1A D1 state tournament. Gets started Thursday from Columbia High School. Yep. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. All right. We'll wrap it up with our 1A D2 state tournament preview right after this break. You're watching the 2024 Idaho High School Girls Basketball State Tournament Preview Special on IdahoSports.com.
Dear all-wheel drive, let's show the road what we've got. Yours, Toyota.
Toyota has 22 all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles, more than any other brand. Toyota. Let's go places.
But it's just water vapor, right?
Vapes don't make vapor, they produce an aerosol. These particles include toxins and chemicals that can cause lung disease and cancer. Be smart, don't start.
Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com 2024 Girls Basketball State Tournament Preview Special. It is time to talk 1A D2 Girls Hoops, and we've brought in the third member of ZZ Top to assist us. It's Glenn Jones. What's going on, Glenn? Uh-oh, your mic's muted, buddy. You gotta unmute your mic, Glenn.
How's that?
There we go.
Sweet music.
Yes.
Well, I had the guitar going in the background, so I had to mute you.
Yeah, no, it's it sounded great, I'm sure.
You know what? Just before we get started, as the oldest member of the IdahoSports.com broadcasting crew, I'd like to put in an official protest for going last and keeping me up to, well, that's darn near 10 o'clock. So you can pass that along to Paul because I'm afraid to talk to him.
I will submit something to the complaint file at HQ. I do apologize, not to you, Glenn. I don't really care about you, but I apologize. No, I'm just kidding. I apologize to all the 1A D2 fans that had to sit a little longer as we got behind schedule because we've had some really stimulating conversation about every single state tournament, and this is what it's all about. So,
you know, the words bloviate comes to mind when those others were starting to talk. So I'm not sure. I'm here to get us back on schedule.
That ship has sailed, my friend. So we'll just navigate through this as we can. Ryan's a big fan, though. Thoroughly enjoyed the preview show. Thanks, gentlemen, in IdahoSports.com. Thank you, Ryan. And we want to hear from all the 1A D2 fans. If you've got a player, a coach, a team you want to give a shout out to, throw it in the comments. We will throw it up on the screen. But for now, let's throw up that 1A D2 bracket, Glenn. Here's the breakdown. Nampa High School will host these games right away, noon on Thursday, 4 versus 5, Deary and Mackey. That's followed by number 1 Dietrich and number 8 Rockland, Thursday at 2 o'clock. Kendrick, the 2 seed, will play Ledor, the 7 seed, Thursday at 5, and then it's 3 versus 6 district rivals, Council and Salmon River, in the final game at 7 o'clock. What's the first thing that jumps out to you when you look at this bracket, Glenn?
The first thing that jumps out at me, Brandon, is you look at league play. Mackey, Ledor, Rockland finished 1, 2, 3. They're in the tournament. Kendrick and Deary finished 1, 2. They're in the tournament. Council and Salmon River finished 1, 2. They're in the tournament. Dietrich won theirs. They're in the tournament. We have everybody here that is supposed to be here. And you know, one of the things I want to comment on real quickly, when we talk about upsets, that always has not sat well with me, because we're talking the top 8 teams in the entire state of Idaho. So can you really call it an upset when you get to the state tournament? You're facing, number one, tough competition, because you got the top 8 teams there. Number 2, you're facing teams you've never faced before. That's a little different. Number 3, anything can happen in the tournament, as we've seen all those crazy things happen. And you can take the word upset and throw it out the window.
Okay, Glenn is upset with the word upset.
Upset. Hey, 1 second.
Oh, all right. We lost Glenn. Here's what I will say in the chat. We do have Mary Lou, go Lady Tigers. I'm going to guess that's the Kendrick Tigers. But we also had a really good that's not a tiger, that's a dog. That's
a dog. It's not a bulldog, but it's a dog.
Yes.
He was standing on the couch. I apologize, but he's recovering from back surgery, and we're not supposed to let him jump. So I'm going to set him down. You'll probably hear him whine in the background because he wants to do something.
That's all right. Okay, so we've got more comments rolling in here. Shauna says, go Deary Mustangs. Amanda says, go Rockland. And then here's Ryan. Great point, Glenn, talking about upsets. We just use that because there's numbers next to the name. But yeah, for sure. It's a really even tournament top to bottom. Here's Jamie. Go Lady Miners. That's Mackie.
We got everybody watching here. This is awesome. We got a little bit of everybody invested.
Pretty good representation amongst all the schools. Let's start with that number 1 seed. It's Dietrich. And all year, in my mind, the clear kind of top 3 teams have been Dietrich and Richfield, who was in Dietrich's district and didn't get to state, and then Kendrick, and then kind of Deary. It's kind of this group of 4 that all came from the same 2 districts. Dietrich does get the 1 seed. They've got to play I mean, when you look on paper, you go Rockland, an 8 seed. That just doesn't compute with me. But for Dietrich out of the gates,
that's a tough draw, I think. Everybody else had talked about the 8 versus 1, have nothing to lose, everything to gain. And that's true here too, with any 8 seed against a number 1 seed, a really tough draw. But Rockland, they've been to this tournament like 8 years in a row, something incredible that they go year after year after year. Now, what happened 3 years ago doesn't really affect this team, because all those players are gone and we have new players. But that experience, at least from the last couple of years, you have girls that are now on this team, and just a tremendous amount of experience, and you can't put anything quantitative on that. It's something that it's an innate thing. That experience really helps you in games like this. And you're on the road, you're sleeping in a motel, playing 3 games in a row, really different. But that first one, Dietrich Rockland, Dietrich needs to come out, and I think, and play and make a statement right away. Even though they're the number 1 seed, Rockland's going to be a tough matchup. One of the things Rockland has going against it is their bench strength. They're very, very, very thin on the bench, and if they get into foul trouble, it's going to be a long morning or afternoon, rather.
Yes, and for Rockland, they did have to defeat Clark Fork, the Wampus Cats, the champions from District 1 in the state play-in game, a game that we had live on IdahoSports.com this past Saturday. It was close for a half, and then Rockland kind of, put on the afterburners in the second half and won 53-32. These teams did play, Glenn, way back at the start of the season, November 14th, November 16th. Dietrich won that night by 20, 52-32. So Dietrich does have maybe a little momentum going their way, and they've got kind of all the requisites of what you would look at in terms of a championship contender, right? They've got good size and rebounding with, Jessica Power underneath. They've got good guard play from Ellie Hoskison and Aaliyah Robertson. They've got solid defense from Sage Hubert. This is a really good, complete Dietrich team.
It really is a good Dietrich team. They're only giving up 33 points per game over the season, averaging 52. So they can do it on both ends of the court. They have people who can score. They have people that can play defense. What I'm interested always in seeing is how the transition game's going, how you can get those those transition buckets on moving the offense and not even setting up and getting down there and scoring 2 points. Rockland's going to have to do a little bit of that if they're going to be able to stay in with Dietrich, in my opinion.
In terms of the coaching, Rick Estelle's been coaching Dietrich for a long time. Rockland, their longtime coach, Vern Nelson, he had coached them for 20 years plus.
Yes.
He retired. Now it's a new Jordan Black is the new coach. She's leading kind of a new era for Rockland girls basketball here as well. Let's talk about that 5 versus 4 matchup right above Dietrich and Rockland. A district runner-up, Deary, the 4 seed, against a district champion from Mackey. I actually think the seeding is right here. I would say Deary is, based on what happened in the regular season, one of the 4 best teams. Now, Mackey, of course, is going to be motivated to prove that wrong, but this, to me, is one of the toughest games to gauge in this opening round.
It is a really tough game to gauge, and I look at this as a slugfest. Both these teams coming out trying to make a statement down low. But having said that, I think a little bit opposite of you, Brandon. I think Mackey is going to have a big chip on their shoulder. They won their conference. Not only did they win their conference, they were undefeated in conference play. And so you turn around and you go, what else you want us to do? We're not one of the top 4 teams. We got the 4 conferences. We won ours, and we're the 5 seed. You know, that's as one of the guys was saying earlier, that's bulletin board material. Oh, that's you, bulletin board Baney. That's right.
Yeah. I no shortage. I'm glad to supply Mackey with some bulletin board material. Here's Jeff in the chat. Go Mackey. Mackey did play Dietrich earlier this year and fell. They lost to Richfield, as we talked about, a really good team that's not here at state. And yet, since a loss to Butte County on January 8th, they have rolled. Now, it's been all conference play, but they have won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row coming into this state tournament. They've got a lot of good athletes. They've got.
I had it at eight in a row, but I could be wrong.
No, you're probably, I don't know how to count. That's probably right. We'll go with 8 in a row.
That's pretty good. If you got a win streak like that going, a lot can be said for momentum coming into the tournament. And, you just need momentum to carry into that first game. And then you let the momentum from the first game dictate what happens for the next game.
Mackey has 4 seniors, but they also get a lot of production from this group of sophomores. You look at Danica Seafried and Alyssa Pearson and Mikkel Holt are all great athletes. And then it pairs nicely with those 4 seniors, like Cadence Seafried and Austin Wazilo and Alyssa Hawley. And so it's a nice blend of seniors and sophomores, almost kind of like the perfect combination there for Coach Josh Pearson.
It is. And I think when I looked at all these teams, and granted, I'm in the Boise area and there's not a whole lot of 1A D2 teams in my neighborhood, but looking at these teams and how they scored and how they got there, I think Mackey has probably one of the more balanced teams out there. And that could go a long way in determining how far down into this tournament that they do go.
Yep, we've got Michelle Peterson in the chat. Go Mackey, won their conference over highly ranked Ledore and Rockland. And I believe their boys basketball team got a 1-point win over Showband tonight at districts as well. So a good night to be a Mackey Miner.
There you go, the Mackey Miners, digging it.
For sure. Well, let's talk about Deary on the other side, this 4 seed. This is a Deary team that's no stranger at getting to state. Famously, I think it was 2 years ago, Deary and Kendrick had to play each other in the first round, and Deary knocked out Kendrick in a quote-unquote upset. I know you hate that word. Deary doesn't have a lot of players, but the players they do have are phenomenal. It starts with really the 2 seniors, Kennedy Kirk and Araya Wood, basically 4-year varsity players, and just the prototypical leaders you would want in a program.
That's exactly who you want. And I'm going to talk about leadership a little later, but we might as well do it now. Leadership is tantamount to coming out on this tournament and winning. The problem I see with Deary is after those 2 seniors, everybody else is very, very, very young. And you come into a state tournament like this with all the pressures we talked about and all the different variables we talked about. can those seniors pick up those sophomores and freshmen and pull them along with them? That's going to be one of the keys that I'm going to be looking at in this Deary-Mackey matchup.
Deary has lost 7 times this year. They lost 3 times to Kendrick, twice to Prairie. So 5 of the 7 losses right there. They also lost to Troy and Genesee, which are D1 schools. They lost to Kendrick by a point, and then they lost to Kendrick by 8, and then they lost to Kendrick again in the district championship by 8. So I don't know. I think they're pretty battle tested for sure. But it's going to be an interesting top half of the bracket there. Let's get to the bottom. Here's Ryan in the chat. People discounted Council after a couple early losses, but Hope Zolman was out with a concussion. They are playing well now, and of course are the defending champs. Go Lumberjacks. Yes, we have kind of all forgotten about Council. If you can, forget about a defending state champion, Glenn.
Well, you can't, number one.
But we did. We all did.
Not everybody. Council, you know, a little bit later, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Council, but right now in this game, it's a tough matchup for Council, and it's a tough matchup for Salmon River both. They know each other very well. They play each other every single year, multiple times every year, see each other in the district, sometimes see each other in the state tournament. You know, are there any new wrinkles that they haven't seen before? Probably not. So this is really going to be a slugfest of 2 teams who know how they each how the other person dances and who's going to have the best moves out there on the court. This is going to be a key game right here.
So they split in the regular season. Salmon River did beat Council in December by 8, 53-45. That was part of that stretch where they didn't have Hope Zolman, but everybody else was there. And then in the rematch, Council had kind of clicked and gotten it together. They won 67-41. Okay, that's pretty convincing. And yet, this is another team kind of like Deary. They don't have a ton of players, Salmon River, but the ones they do are pretty good. And same with Council, right? Council doesn't have a ton of players either, but the ones they have are really good. So who can stay out of foul trouble might be a key, not just in this first round, but through the course of the tournament also.
Yeah. Always foul trouble is absolutely key. And then you start digging deep down into your bench, the benches of Salmon River especially, and then Council a little bit as well could come into play. But, Council is, I believe, the second leading scoring team in 1A D2. I believe they are. They're really good on offense. On all the teams in the tournament in defense, when you talk about Deary and Kendrick and Ledor and Mackey and all the others, Council is the 8th ranked team in the state tournament. Not to say that their defense is not good, but of the 8 teams, they are ranked last.
Yep. Second best offense. You're right. Only behind Kendrick, which we'll get to here in a second. Obviously Council, Hope Zolman, Rihanna Iverson. They've got Cora Bingham, a junior who, provides some spark off the bench. The key to their championship win last year, Michaela Hart, the 6-foot post, she moved to Tri-Valley and took her younger sister with her. So that's something Council doesn't have this year. Tri-Valley's not here though. Salmon River took out Tri-Valley in basically the 3rd place game at districts. And this is a Salmon River team, Glenn, that, there was a little bit of controversy around Salmon River at districts in terms of
we can't hide from that. We all know what happened. Didn't show for whatever reason. We don't care about the reason, but I think Salmon River, you talk about a chip on their shoulder, they blasted through the losers bracket and said, baby, we're going to state. And guess what? They're here. And right out of the chute, they draw Council. I saw that and I just started chuckling going, man, oh man, this is going to be some fireworks on the floor. I can't wait for Gary and I to be there to watch it, and Gary has all those Council ties. My oldest child was born in Council. That's the first town I moved to when I moved to Idaho was Council, Idaho. So I know that town well, and I know the people there and friends with a lot of them. It's a great community, and Salmon River as well. And this is going to be a live wire game. If you want to watch a game that has just a little bit of everything in it, tune into this one.
Salmon River's got an 8th grader and 3 freshmen that played as 8th graders last year. So they've already got lots of experience.
They have that experience, and another 8th grader on the team this year. It's incredible.
Yep. How about this? We've got an actual 1A D2 player in the chat here, Glenn. Caitlin Severson from Water Springs over in Idaho Falls. She says, go Ledor, Mackey, and Rockland. Fun playing against these teams. Yes, it was a very fun conference to watch this year. Congratulations, Caitlin, to you and your Water Springs teammates as well on an outstanding season. Let's talk about it. Ledor, the 7 seed. They got to go up against Kendrick, 2 seed. Ledor on Saturday before the Max Preps rankings had finalized, they were sitting pretty good. They were like the 5 seed. They were ahead of Mackey. Then that Saturday update came through. They had dropped all the way down to number 7. Now they got to play Kendrick, a really good Kendrick team.
Yeah, they do. On the other side of the coin, Kendrick has to play Ledor. They're 17-4, and they're that for a reason. They're well coached. They have players on the team that can play offense, that can play defense, that can get in the passing lane and steal. They've got transition. They got just about everything you can. This is going to be a tough matchup. And I'm really excited coming out of the break to watch Kendrick and Ledor play. This is going to be another good one. This is one of the ones that both games in the evening. Fasten your seatbelt. They are going to be fascinating games, and I think it's going to come down. It could come down to coaching and what's going to happen in the final 2 or 3 minutes. And especially how you make those halftime adjustments. Coaches love halftimes because you can get in there and you can make adjustments on defense. You're making adjustments on offense, and you can turn what seemed to be an unfavorable situation into a favorable one. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, Ledor has gotten to state now 3 years in a row, Glenn, after previously not making it since like 2001, something like that. Janet Pruill, what she has done with this Ledor program is remarkable. And last year, they lost 2 seniors to graduation in Sadie Bird and Mackenzie Mackey. They were 4-year players, the heart and soul of the program. And Coach Pruill in the preseason said, hey, we're basically, we lost the anchors of our program and we're kind of having to start over. She said, now I think we have players that can match that level of success. The key is going to be, we can't try to imitate what Mackey and Bird did. We have to find our own style and find our own way. And they've done it.
And that's what good coaches do. They don't sit on the laurels of what happened last year or this player, or if you have a player that gets injured. A lot of teams have, for lack of a better way to say it, next man up, even though we're in the girls' tournaments. Who's the next person up? The next lady that's going to step off the bench and do their job to help their team win. And, both these teams have those guys on the bench that can come out and do that. So it's going to be exciting to watch.
Kendrick 3 years ago made it all the way to the 1A D2 state championship game where they lost to Tri-Valley. They had a young freshman named Ruby Stewart who came in off the bench and was a key player for that team. She's now a senior, and her and the rest of these seniors, Haley Taylor and Harley Heimgartner, and you look at Taylor Boyer and Natalie Kimbley. They're kind of like we talked about Murtaugh in the 1A D1 preview. Kendrick is trying to, finish the job here. They got to the championship as freshmen, and then they've kind of stubbed their toe the last 2 years at state. But now they come in as the number 2 seed, and they're trying to complete that circle and finally break through and win that championship.
That's exactly what I thought. I was looking in the past, what happened, where these teams were, and who the players were that moved on to those teams. And Kendrick is sitting in a great position right now to be primed to move on and take that final step and bring home the coveted state trophy.
Yep, it's going to be really interesting to see. Let's go to our 1A D2 players to watch. We've got Paul, our executive producer, back screen. Paul, can you throw that graphic up? I'm not seeing it in my window. The 1A D2 players to watch. We picked one player from each team, kind of a jumping off point to get the discussion started. So here we go. Rihanna Iveson from Council, Kennedy Kirk from Deary, Sage Hubert from Dietrich, Haley Taylor from Kendrick, Lexi Bird from Ledor, Cadence Seafried from Mackey, Callan Perman from Rockland, and Rainey Walters from Salmon River. Glenn, give me one player you're most excited to see play this weekend.
Well, you're going to call me a homer, but I'm taking Rihanna Iverson from Council, and here's why. Now, don't laugh at me, Brandon. I know that.
Okay.
I know that little smirk. Okay, here's why. They're the defending champs. She's a senior. She was on the team last year. She helped win the state tournament last year. She's the one I want to watch. Can you take this team with Hope Zolman and the rest of those young ladies and bring them up and complete what is really hard to do, which is back-to-back state championships? That's the one I'm kind of got my eye on to see how she's going to handle the pressure of being the one that everybody's going to look to make the big play on defense, to make the big shot on offense, to get a big rebound and offensive rebound and keep it alive, get a tip in, things like that. Knock down those free throws when you need them in the final couple of minutes of play. I'm really looking forward to seeing her play and how her leadership has developed over the year and what she's going to do.
Council is the defending champs, like my high school coach used to say. All that means is the target's a little bigger. The sign that says everybody hit the pinata gets a little larger. So
Billboard Baby, I love it, man.
All right, Glenn, can I get an official championship prediction out of you here from this?
Yes, you can. Okay. So I've got, in a tough matchup, I've got Dietrich beating Rockland. I've got Mackey beating Deary in a close contest. On the lower side, I got Kendrick and Council advancing. And in the championship game, I've got Kendrick beating Mackey. 2 versus 5. Just like Mr. Hatfield from Council, he predicted a 2 and a 5 for the 1A D1s. I'm right with you, my friend. I've got a 2 and a 5 going to the championship game and the 2 coming out on top. This is Kendrick's year.
Glenn, you'll never have to buy a meal in Mackey again.
I'm heading there. Paul, send me, Paul.
All right. Well, that'll wrap up our 1A D2 state tournament preview here on IdahoSports.com. Hey, big thanks to everybody who hung here all throughout the night. This preview show is by far the longest that we've done since I've started here at IdahoSports.com. Part of that is my fault for not being a good host and traffic cop, but part of it too is we had such good conversation and good interaction with the fans, and that's really what it's all about. So I have one more request before we get out of here for the night. If you're still hanging around, if you can hit that like button and then share this when it's all said and done, that will help everybody else watch the replay a little easier. It's a little easier to find amongst all the social media stuff if you hit that like button and then share it. So big thanks to everybody. Glenn, thank you for breaking down the 1AD2 brackets. We appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, and thanks for having me, man.
All right, don't forget, IdahoSports.com is your official audio streaming partner of the IHSAA Girls State Basketball Tournament. All the games are live. All the games are free. Tune in and listen to Idaho's best broadcasters. We know these players. We know these coaches. We know these communities. They're like our extended family. If you want that familiarity and a good broadcast, tune in to IdahoSports.com. All right, for Glenn and for Clay and for Sean and Paul and Lauren and Logan and Lucas and Ryan, thank you. And we'll see you in Boise for the Girls State Basketball Tournament starting Thursday on IdahoSports.com.